Imagine being the village punching bag. That was Gray, constantly humiliated by a bully named Belder in the streets of Villa Ranabu. But today, everything was about to change for good. The usual trap was set, but Gray was done playing the victim. He snatched up a sword, and even when Belder launched a cheap shot without warning, Gray didn't even flinch. He dodged every single swing with terrifying precision. It was like he could see the future. Belder realized right then that something was seriously wrong with his favorite target. Then, things got even weirder. Gray just closed his eyes, waited for the perfect opening, and with one effortless flick, he sent Belder's sword flying across the room. The bully actually admitted defeat. But what he didn't know was that Gray wasn't that same coward anymore. He needed to make sure this lesson stuck for good. He swung the blade down with lethal force, striking the bully hard. But don't worry, Gray isn't the villain here. It was just a graze to show he could have ended it. He wasn't done yet. Gray delivered one more heavy hit with the flat of the blade, sending Belder flying through the air like a ragdoll. To everyone watching, the local coward had suddenly transformed into a stone-cold predator. Belder's gang thought they could save face by jumping him 4 against 1, thinking that numbers would actually matter. But let me tell you, they were dead wrong. It didn't help them at all. All 4 goons ended up on the floor with their heads ringing from more hits than they could count. Gray looked down at them and made it crystal clear. From this moment on, none of them would ever dare look down on him again. One wrong move and they would end up like that leaf. He sliced it perfectly in half midair. Belder was so terrified he actually ran away screaming for a diaper change. But here is the crazy part that nobody knows. Gray has a dark secret. 15 years in the future, he was part of an elite squad of heroes assembled to stop the world's ultimate nightmare, the Liquidator. This thing was a literal god of destruction that erased an entire continent from the map like it was nothing but dust. The greatest warriors on Earth teamed up to stop it. We are talking about a man who could tank a giant's strike without a scratch and a sage with the power of a whole army. They had a legendary archer who one-shotted high dragons and the world's strongest swordswoman, but even with all that power, every single one of them was absolutely slaughtered. Gray had to watch them die, unable to do anything. Back then, he was just a low-ranked soldier, a disposable pawn that nobody would ever bother to remember. But when the end finally came, something impossible happened. A mysterious force kept him breathing in a situation where he definitely should have been dead. A being called Kronos appeared with a shocking revelation. Gray's hidden potential was actually stronger than the Liquidator himself. The only problem? He had absolutely no idea how to tap into that power or control it yet. Gray was thrust back into the fight, armed with a black sword crackling with red lightning. He charged straight at the monster for one final, desperate gamble. He actually managed to draw blood, something the world's greatest heroes couldn't do. But even then, it just wasn't enough to finish the job. The Liquidator was untouchable inside his own realm, and Gray was just swinging blindly. That's when Kronos decided to step in and fix everything for good. He banished the monster and threw Gray back into the past. This was a second chance to learn everything he missed and finally get the future right this time around. Gray woke up back in Villa Ranabu, 15 years before the apocalypse, and in his very first moments back, he ran straight into Belder and his gang of goons. You already saw how that ended. With all 4 bullies begging for mercy, Gray sheathed his sword and looked at Belder. He had one simple demand: a referral to the legendary Shinsira dojo. He needed a ticket into the world's greatest academy, and this humiliated bully was the fastest way to get his foot in the door. Belder scrambled to the dojo to recommend him. Once they reached the city, he finally asked why Gray was so obsessed with this specific place. Gray simply explained that the dojo was his only path to getting a recommendation for the elite academy. One of the goons mentioned that Gray already seemed strong enough without more schooling. But Gray knew better. His current strength was nowhere near enough to face what was coming. After all, not even the world's top elite squad could take down the Liquidator. Even with his black sword power, he could not even leave a scratch on that monster. He had no idea how much more power he would need to kill that god, but he had clues on how to get there and he was determined. In that moment, he felt a flicker of dark power. He knew he had to master the legendary sword style of the Holy Swordsman. If he had just trained harder under those same conditions in his past life, the entire world might have actually survived the first time. This is exactly why Kronos sent him back. Meanwhile, Belder's master was absolutely furious that he used her techniques to bully an innocent civilian. Sarah, the dojo's head instructor, did not hide her disappointment. Belder tried to play it off as a simple training session, but she was not buying it. Sarah immediately corrected him with a wooden sword to the head. She told him to stop making excuses, because attacking someone who is not even armed is not training, it is just being a coward. Pointing her blade at Belder, she told him to get out and never show his face at her dojo again. She didn't stop there either. She kicked out the entire gang, telling them they were no longer her students. As the losers walked away, Sarah turned to Gray and apologized. She heard he wanted a recommendation for the academy. To make up for the trouble her students caused, she offered to write the letter herself, which was exactly what Gray needed. But first, she had to see what he could actually do. She handed him a wooden sword and prepared to test his skills personally. She gave him the first move in their duel. Gray wasted no time, launching a series of lightning-fast strikes that Sarah barely blocked. Sarah noticed his sword style was incredibly practical for someone his age. She could tell he was battle-hardened, especially when he dodged her counterattack with a veteran's instincts. His style looked self-taught, yet it felt strangely similar to the elite academy sword arts. This kid was a complete mystery to her. As he unleashed a flurry of blows, she wondered who could have possibly trained him. He was a diamond in the rough that just needed a little bit of polishing. After a final barrage of attacks from Gray, Sarah actually had to apologize for what she did next. She went all out to end the test right there, but to her shock, Gray dodged the blow with ease. Just how strong is he? He held his ground against every single strike, refusing to break. Sarah only meant to test the kid's skills, but suddenly, she's fighting for her life. This is where it gets crazy. Why was she terrified of a mere child? Then, it happened. He unleashed a devastating slash dripping with pure, malevolent energy. Sarah leaped back, a chill running down her spine. The move felt desperate, rushed. Finally, he'd shown a weakness. She prepared to end this duel with one final decisive strike. But then snap! Her wooden sword shattered into pieces in an instant. As the broken blade flew, that familiar sensation washed over him. It was true. He still possessed that insane power from the time entity. Suddenly, agony hit. He collapsed to his knees, his body failing to contain that massive power. He could barely breathe, let alone stand, yet he insisted he was just fine. He knew he couldn't use this power recklessly again. He kept his mouth shut though. Even if he told Sarah the truth, there was no way she would actually believe him. Gray tried to play it off, claiming he just got carried away. But Sarah wasn't buying it. You don't just slice through a blunt wooden sword like that. She knew he was lying through his teeth. But Gray clearly wasn't going to talk, so Sarah decided to drop it for now and move on to the real business. About that academy recommendation? She could give it. We're talking the Royal Swordsmanship Academy, the absolute top-tier school in the entire kingdom. But there was a catch. She couldn't send him there yet. He simply wasn't ready for that world. Gray knew he was weak. Without that mysterious power manifesting, he was basically a nobody who couldn't get anything done. Instead, she pointed him toward the Unified World Academy. It wasn't just the best in the kingdom, it was the most legendary school on the planet. Get ready for this. Gray was stunned. The Unified World Academy? That's where the Holy Swordsman and all the greatest legends started. It was the absolute pinnacle for any aspiring hero. Gray asked if he even stood a chance. Sarah's answer? A flat no. His body was nowhere near the level of a true swordsman. He might scrape by at the Royal Academy with pure skill, but at the Unified, skills alone wouldn't cut it. He'd be eaten alive. Sarah wondered how such a frail body held so much skill. Gray knew the truth though. Everyone at that academy was a literal prodigy. Right now, he wasn't even close to their league. But Sarah told him not to quit. He still had 9 months left until the big entrance exam. 9 months was a gamble, but she told him to trust her. She promised to put him through the most brutal training imaginable to get him ready for that academy. Gray wasn't exactly excited about the pain, but he accepted. He asked her to lead the way and turn him into a real warrior. Sarah smiled. The torture was about to begin. Days turned into weeks as Gray ate like a monster and trained with an intensity that would break anyone else. He sharpened his blade and forged his body. 8 months later, Gray was rocking a physique that was absolutely shredded. Sarah admitted he'd grown fast. She honestly had nothing left to teach him. For his final month, he needed to head to a secret exam location and arrive as early as possible. She handed him travel money and a full month of supplies. Gray was confused though. Why head out a whole month before the exam even started? He joked that she was basically kicking him out of the village. Sarah just laughed and told him he was being dramatic. Then Gray brought up the ogre nest found nearby. There weren't enough guards to handle it, and Sarah confirmed the threat was very real. She told him not to worry though. Reinforcements from the capital were coming to handle it. She ordered Gray to focus on his exam and leave the village behind. Gray saw right through her lie. No help was coming. He knew exactly what was about to happen. This village would be wiped out, and his master would die first. In the future he remembered they said she died alone against a horde. Gray thanked Syria, pretending to leave, but he wasn't going anywhere. Sarah promised to pray for his success. But that very night, she grabbed her sword and slipped away toward the dark ogre nest. She found the location from the scout reports, but then, a voice came from the trees above. Gray asked where exactly she thought she was going. She was completely shocked to see him there. Why wasn't he on his way to the academy? Gray didn't back down, demanding to know what happened to that royal army she mentioned. Sarah doubled down on her lies, claiming an emergency delayed the troops. That's why she had to handle this suicide mission all by herself. She insisted she could win alone. The report said there were 45 monsters, led by a powerful elite ogre. She truly believed she could take them all down. Even against an elite, she was stubborn. Gray knew that a single elite ogre wasn't the real problem, not if you caught it alone. But these things are smart. They lead. Gray knew that fighting them alone was pure suicide. She'd be surrounded and slaughtered in seconds. He realized the truth. If he left her now and walked away, his master and the village were both doomed. He'd already seen this dark future happen. He begged her to let him help, but Sarah was just as stubborn, insisting she'd handle the nest solo. Gray wasn't backing down. He needed the combat experience and swore up and down that he wouldn't get in her way or slow her down. She couldn't even beat him in their sparring sessions anymore, so he clearly wouldn't be a burden. But a real monster nest is unpredictable. Anything could go wrong out there. It was too dangerous. Sarah firmly believed he needed way more experience before diving into a life-or-death battle like this. Gray had a wild idea. If she insisted on going alone, he'd just fight her until she lost consciousness. Then, he could go deal with those ogres himself. Seeing the look in his eyes, Saria finally gave in, but she made him promise one thing: no matter how bad it gets, he has to come back alive. Gray finally lowered his blade and promised her that he intended to do exactly that. But he had one condition: she couldn't die either. Together, they disappeared into the dark night, heading for a battle that would change everything. But will they both survive? Imagine being trapped in a terrain with zero escape routes. These ogres were smart, overconfident, and nesting in a spot that required absolute caution from our heroes. No sign of the chief yet, but he had to be in that tent. The plan was simple: thin out the herd before the big guy showed up. The master sent Gray to clear one side while she carved a path through the other. Divide and conquer, classic Manhwa style. Weapons out, they moved like lightning. The ogres didn't even have time to blink before the steel started raining down from every direction. Total carnage. Then, a pack of angry beasts charged. Our hero pulled back and delivered a massive spinning slash, wiping out several enemies at once. One ogre tried a desperate axe swing, but Gray was faster, opening its stomach before it could even land a hit. Meanwhile, the master was a blur of blades, untouched and lethal. Between the two of them, the common monsters were getting absolutely demolished. She asked if this was his first real fight. Gray just told her to stay sharp. Something felt off: these monsters were way too weak. He knew his master could solo these weaklings easily, but that tent, something truly horrifying was likely waiting for them inside. Then he saw them. Glowing red eyes in the dark. Gray panicked, screaming for his master to get out of that place right now. They sprinted to escape, but an elite ogre smashed through the camp, blocking their path. The master thought this was the big boss coming to play. But then Gray dropped the truth. That's not the chief. The real nightmare is standing right behind him. A deafening roar shook the entire camp. It was a massive ogre general, and suddenly every monster there turned into a bloodthirsty engine of pure rage. Gray recognized him instantly: an ogre general. Even the master knew this wasn't a monster they could face without a real plan. The new plan? Kill the elite and run for their lives. The master barely blocked a crushing axe blow from the monster. She slashed his chest, but the wound healed instantly. That roar, it gave the monsters infinite recovery and insane physical strength. Every single monster was now a super soldier. Even the weak ones were suddenly terrifyingly hard for our heroes to put down. Gray told his master to cover his back and just buy him some time. He didn't need a win, just a small window. This changed everything. There was only one choice left. Gray charged straight at the ogre general to end this once and for all. It's annoying when they swarm you from behind. He dodged a surprise attack and focused every ounce of energy on the monsters in front. But then disaster. His sword snapped in two. The blade just couldn't handle the impact against those buffed-up, magically strengthened hides. But get this, the ogre had actually predicted his move. It started attacking even more brutally, proving its intelligence was no joke. That high intelligence was for real. He snatched up another blade, desperately parrying those heavy axe swings from the monsters. His master tossed him a second sword, dual-wielding time. But even with two blades, the horde was just too massive to stop. Then the general let out another roar, boosting his army even further. The power gap was becoming a total canyon for our hero. Gray used both swords to shove back the heavy axes. He used every bit of strength to bulldoze his way into the crowd. He carved a straight line through them, but took a brutal hit to the shoulder. The damage was starting to pile up fast. No time to breathe. An ogre grabbed him, pinning his arms while another monster swung for a final killing blow. The hit landed hard. The monsters were purposefully wearing him down, targeting his weapons to leave him completely defenseless. A monster threw a massive punch right at his face. Gray blocked it, but his second blade shattered into a million tiny pieces. He was sent flying, bloodied and broken. He hit the ground hard with yet another destroyed weapon lying by his side. Only one sword left. One man against a literal army and a general. The odds were looking impossible for our hero. Even with all his memories from before the regression, Gray realized he couldn't win this fight as he was now. He yelled for his master to save herself while he distracted them. She just laughed, apologizing because that was not an option. He told her she didn't have to die for him. She looked down, her leg was mangled. She couldn't run if she wanted to. Trapped and bleeding, they were out of moves. Gray felt the crushing weight of fate. Was everything going to end the same way? His last blade snapped. Pure hopelessness. He stood there in denial, refusing to let the story end like this again. But what they didn't know. He had one last card to play. He could use the power of the Black Swordsman to win. He remembered the feeling of facing the Liquidator. He closed his eyes, focusing all that raw power into his broken hilt. When his eyes snapped open, shadows erupted. He swung that broken shard, and a massive magical slash tore through the air. A single blow wiped out half the army. The master couldn't even see the move, she just saw the bodies falling everywhere. Shadows consumed his body as he smiled. He looked like a god of death, making the ogre general tremble in pure fear. One shadow slash later, and the general was history. The master finished off her own attacker with a final, elegant move. With the general dead, the buff vanished. The remaining monsters were nothing. She carved them into pieces in seconds. Gray saved her using his black swordsman form, but he broke her blade. She didn't care. They survived, but the real trouble is just beginning. She asked about that final blow, but Gray didn't say a word. He just collapsed, completely burned out. As he drifted out, she screamed for him to wake up. But Gray was already gone, waking in a dark, empty void. A massive door bound by iron chains stood before him. Then, that dark energy flickered the same terrifying power he had just unleashed. He wondered if opening those chains would give him the strength he craved, but as he stepped forward, a cold, monstrous presence appeared behind him. Deep down, he knew opening that door meant death. The shadow entity whispered that he had made a very wise choice by staying back. Suddenly, Gray jolted awake in a bed. His master was right there, relieved, telling him he had been out cold for 5 whole days. She was terrified he was gone for good. The kid had pushed his body way past the breaking point until it just gave out. Defeating that whole orc army was legendary, she admitted. But then she asked the real question, could he even move his body? Gray tried, but his right arm was a wreck, shaking uncontrollably. He could barely lift it and wondered if he would ever hold a sword again. A dark shadow-like bruise was creeping up his arm. He kept it hidden, simply telling her his right arm had 0 strength left. Sarah dropped the bad news. Every single bone in his right arm was shattered. Recovery wouldn't be fast. He couldn't even feel the pain yet. But Sarah explained they had already treated the damage with a high-level magic potion. Gray couldn't believe it, those potions cost a fortune. It turns out, the village chief had gifted it to him personally. He asked why the chief would spend so much on a nobody. His master just smiled to them. Gray was now a hero. The news caught him off guard. Just then, the chief walked in, thanking Gray over and over for saving them all. That ogre general could have wiped the village off the map. No one was coming to help. Without Gray, everything they knew would be destroyed. Giving up that potion was the least he could do for the man who saved every citizen in town. Gray thought he was laying it on a bit thick, but the chief looked him in the eye. There was no exaggeration. And get this, Gray knew he was right. In his past life, before he regressed, this village really was completely slaughtered. The chief moved on to the details. He knew all about the academy entrance exam Gray was so desperate to take. Only 2 days left. The World Union Academy was a 3-day trek on foot. A horse would get him there in 1, but Gray was broke. So he asked for a favor. But the chief was 1 step ahead, already having the village's fastest horse ready for him. Syria joked that if he hadn't woken up today, they would have just strapped him to the horse while he slept. Gray stepped outside to a sea of people. The whole village was there with signs, cheering for their hero and wishing him luck. One man handed him a bag of coins. The villagers had pooled their savings together so he could actually afford the academy tuition. Moved by their kindness, Gray thanked them all. He promised he wouldn't even show his face again if he failed the exam. Sarah reminded him that no other candidate had ever taken down an ogre general. But Gray was still staring at his broken arm. She told him his left arm was enough, no need for that dark power. But Gray worried the academy wouldn't be that easy on him. Sarah was dead certain the examiners would see his raw talent and pass him on the spot, no doubt about it. In his old life, this village was ashes. Now, it was standing tall. This changed everything. The world was officially on a new path. Hope finally flickered. He could change the future with this power. And with that, his journey to the academy truly began. Thanks to that prize horse, Gray made it to the exam city in record time. Talk about a fast ride. There it was, the World Union Academy. A massive castle loomed over him as he walked in to grab his ticket. He headed to the central arena to wait. Looking around, the crowd was huge. Rumor was only 20 people would actually make the cut. The passing rate was always a gamble. It changed every single year depending on the talent of the candidates. Last year 50 made it. Once, only 1 person passed. Then, over the speakers, they announced the arrival of Professor Ariel. She started handing out the tickets. Everyone had to take a paper and slide their finger across to trigger a burst of magic. Gray grabbed his. Candidate 513 for the fencing course. To his surprise, the paper was blank except for his number and major. At this academy, they didn't care about your age, your gender, or how much money you had in your pocket. They didn't even put names on the tickets. Status meant absolutely nothing to these people. Only skill mattered. Names are for winners. You can even use a fake one. Gray didn't care. Even without his sword, he was ready to fight. Gray looked down. Fencing course, this was it. His destiny was finally in his hands. Ariel assigned everyone's course just by looking at them. She told anyone who thought she missed the mark to raise their hand. Everyone was shocked. Was it just a guess, or was she using some crazy mind-reading magic to see their true potential? No one moved. Everyone was right where they belonged. Then she dropped the schedule. Gray's exam was set for 11 a.m. today. Gray was dreading this. His arm was still totally busted, but the academy rules were brutal. Show up for the practical exam right now or face immediate disqualification. Changing the time was impossible. Even worse, Gray had absolutely zero strength left in his right arm. He prayed for a miracle recovery, but the next morning, nothing. Still, Gray decided to push through and face the exam anyway. A servant points him toward the arena. His left arm is fine, but his right, it's moving like it's stuck in slow motion. With minutes left, Gray locks in. He's analyzing every move the examiner makes, hunting for one tiny opening. Suddenly, a massive brute charges the examiner like a bull. He swings boom, but the swordsman dodges, leaving the heavy blade buried in the dirt. The brute isn't done yet. He rips his sword from the ground and lunges again, but the examiner casually blocks the massive strike with a thin, elegant blade. The brute is stunned. His giant sword can't even chip the opponent's weapon. Just like that, the examiner breaks his guard. One swift counterattack sends the heavy sword flying and knocks the giant flat on his back. It's over. The brute retreats in shame. Watching from the sidelines, Gray feels like this is a total lost cause. Candidate 513, it's time. Gray steps out, heart sinking. He has to face a guy who just crushed a giant using only one single arm. The examiner offers Gray the first move. He knows he's outclassed, but he decides to give it everything he's got. He charges. As he advances, Gray remembers his master's words: don't just swing with your arms. You have to channel the power of your entire body. Even with a dead arm, Gray shifts the weight to his other muscles. He delivers a lightning-fast cut, but the examiner dodges. This isn't training anymore. Swinging a sword with half your strength is a whole different beast. As his left arm prepares a follow-up, the examiner spots a gap and moves in. But then, something weird happens. To Gray, the instructor's blade looks slow. He predicts the path and defends it with ease. The guy has raw power, sure, but his speed? It's nothing compared to Gray's master. He trusts in the swordsmanship he learned and realizes he can actually bridge the strength gap. Gray launches a frontal assault, then blitzes toward the examiner with incredible speed. The examiner looks visibly shocked. What they didn't know was that Gray had totally overestimated him. He wasn't the monster Gray first thought. He remembers his master's promise that he would absolutely win this. Their blades clash and Gray deflects the man's arm upward. This is it. He's actually going to win. He reads the examiner perfectly, but the sheer power difference is still massive. He just can't break the man's solid stance. Winning with one hand is proving to be harder than it looks. But then, he notices the examiner's movements are starting to get sloppy and disorganized. Gray dodges a heavy swing and sets the trap. He stands perfectly still, just waiting for the examiner to commit to one final attack. The instructor brings his blade down in a massive vertical strike and open invitation. Gray sidesteps, baiting the man into exposing his biggest weakness. It was too predictable. The instructor's back is wide open now. At this point, the power difference between them doesn't mean a thing. Gray moves for the kill shot, ready to unleash a surprise attack on the examiner's back. But just as he's about to strike, the fight is suddenly cut short. Wait, it's over already? The announcer shouts that the time limit has been reached. Gray is left standing there, frozen. The result? A draw. Gray is devastated. He had the winning blow right there, but the clock stole his victory. He feels like he failed. Gray gave it his absolute best, but without a clear win, he knows things look bad. He's already planning to try again next year. Gray looks at the Grand Coliseum one last time. 1 week later, the big shots at the World Union Academy gather for a meeting. The old man asks for the verdict. You and I can see they agree this joint observation method was a massive success for finding talent. Another member chimes in, we can't just ignore a special talent just to make the process easier. The old man snaps, enough about the system. Tell me about the students. Starting with the swordsman, they ask who actually made the cut and passed the exam. Everyone who beat their examiner is in. But they're also evaluating others based on pure skill. 3 candidates who didn't win still managed to stand out. They argue that average students won't survive the classes anyway, so the focus must stay on the top elites. Surprisingly, not a single person raises an objection. The list of approved swordsmen was almost final until someone spoke up and asked about candidate number 513. Professor Ariel, a striking woman with red hair, demands answers. The evaluators pull up the footage of Gray's fight and start to smirk. They admit he almost won, but they're calling his tactics traps. Now they're questioning if someone who fights like that even belongs in their prestigious academy. They dismiss him, saying he has technique but zero raw strength. To them, he was being totally outmatched from the first second to the last. And just like that, they throw out Gray's chance of getting in. Ariel knows they're making a huge mistake. The next morning, a massive crowd of nervous candidates gathers right in front of the clock tower. Gray clutches his application form, waiting for the results. Then, the names of the lucky 6 are finally announced. They read the first 5 names, but none of them are his. Then the full list is posted. Gray searches and searches, but his name isn't anywhere to be found. The winners are told to cross the bridge and enroll before sunset. Gray is left behind, staring at the dream he lost. While the losers watched, their application forms began to burst into flames. Our hero thought he was done for, but then a special divine eye admission changed everything. Candidate 513 Gray was approved, and his form ignited in a mysterious blue fire. Gray was in, but he had never even heard of this divine eye category before. People were already talking trash, calling the academy weak for such questionable picks. But what they didn't know was Gray suspected his master's secret influence. An old man shut down the haters, warning them to respect the special admission. This was the legendary Divine Eye, the tier that has been churning out elite heroes for centuries. The biggest names like Amy White and Jacob Bloomfield were Divine Eye picks. But the current students? They thought these legends were just a bunch of lucky failures. Gray knew better. These were the absolute monsters who fought the Liquidator head-on. Now, his name would sit alongside those legends. But no time to celebrate. The ceremony was starting in 30 minutes, and everyone was gathering at the main square. Suited up in the academy uniform, our boy arrived at the square. But looking around, the students started wondering if they were even in the right place. Suddenly, an official stepped up and told them there was a slight delay due to a mistake in the preparations. He told everyone to back off as he summoned magic to set the massive stairs in place. Then, the structure began to fracture. A blinding light erupted as a massive wave of raw magical energy flooded the entire area. Boom! The main building literally rose from the earth. The instructors just acted casual, telling everyone to find a seat. Total shock. The students realized they were watching high-level teleportation magic moving entire mountains of stone. Gray realized they wanted a view, a massive flex to show off the school building before the ceremony began. Seeing the academy move buildings like toys was insane. Only 30 out of 600 candidates made the cut. Gray felt totally out of place after all. He was a sword specialist, not some genius scholar. His friend didn't let him off easy, joking about his lack of brains. She explained this place only takes the world's absolute best. Just then, the heavy hitters started arriving from every corner of the globe. Dragons and balloons dropped from the sky as the massive airship Strat Queen finally appeared. Gray had actually boarded that legendary monster back during the old war days. It was actually one of the biggest ships in existence, brought out specifically just to make a grand entrance for the ceremony. The scale of this academy was just absurd. Students from every other major school were finally touching down at that moment. The ceremony finally kicked off with some guy in glasses and a director who loved the sound of his own voice. Even at an elite school, speeches are a snooze fest. Gray was literally nodding off until the top students were finally called up. The director called Leon Hart to the stage, the #1 prodigy in the swordsmanship course. The whispers started immediately. Rumor had it Leonhard Apis actually defeated his examiner during the test. People were saying his skills were already on the level of the actual professors. Leon asked for the mic and decided to skip the boring stuff. He had a direct message for the entire school. He looked at his peers and dropped a bomb, calling out those who didn't get in normally. He talked about honor and working together to save the world, but his tone was anything but friendly. He claimed to be looking forward to achieving greatness alongside his prestigious classmates. But then he turned cold. He claimed a certain someone didn't belong here, targeting Professor Ariel and her special Divine Eye student. Professor Ariel didn't blink, reminding him that every student passed a brutal examination. She wasn't about to start kicking people out, but Leon doubled down. He wasn't talking about the regular students. He was calling out the irregular that Ariel had snuck into the academy. Leon demanded that the Divine Eye student reveal themselves right now. He wanted them to hand over their uniform and get out of his academy immediately. Gray was totally confused by the pure hate. Luckily, Leon didn't recognize his face, so he decided to just keep his mouth shut. Ariel just laughed it off, but Leon was dead serious. He insisted they stop letting these irregular students into the academy. That's when Ariel got close. She whispered that he wasn't even half as strong as Gray. Leon froze. She loved his arrogance and proposed a bet, putting her entire career and Gray's future on the line. Leon was ready to throw hands, asking if she wanted them to duel. Ariel just laughed. No way. If Gray actually fought with his full strength, Leon would end up in a casket. As an educator, she couldn't risk a student's life like that. Leon was fuming, but Ariel wasn't joking. Instead of a duel, they were going to hunt monsters. She knew Leon was a monster-slaying specialist, so the rules were simple. They just had to eliminate the specific targets she picked out. Every single round, the monsters will just keep getting stronger. The first one who fails to slay their target loses everything. If Gray fails, Ariel will have to retire from her position forever. But if Leon loses, he belongs to her. And trust me, you don't want to lose to Professor Ariel. Before signing his life away, Leonhart demanded to know the targets. He was confident, but not reckless. Then, Ariel dropped a proposal that changed everything for us. Her first target? An ogre general. Leonhart slammed his hand down in pure indignation. This was suicide. There was no way he could face a monster like that alone. Professor Ariel did not blink. She was dead serious about him defeating this monster. She gave him a 1-year deadline, but Leon Hart was not buying it. If a single year of training was enough to slay a general, the world would not be suffering. He demanded a different, more realistic monster for the test. He doubled down. If these beasts were that easy to kill, humanity would not be on the brink. That is when Ariel threw in one final insane condition. In a tie, Leon wins. But if he fails to slay the Ogre General, Ariel gets fired and our protagonist gets kicked out. It was total career suicide. Leon Hart called it what it was, pure madness. But Ariel knew she had him cornered. The bet was officially on. But Leon Hart had a surprise. He claimed an Ogre General was not even his final challenge. Without another word, he agreed to sign the contract. He grabbed the pen and signed that magical contract without a second of hesitation. But even he had to ask, could a mere student actually pull this off? The other students were stunned. Why would Ariel risk her entire career on some random boy? To them, she was just a washed-up shadow of her former self. Gray, however, was far from happy. He realized the professor had set that 1-year deadline specifically because of him. He realized she must have been scouting him long before enrollment. Looking at her demands, it hit him his professor was playing a very dirty game with these conditions. Stick with me, because this is where the real magic begins. The professor knew they were shocked to see a lecture starting on day 1, but in this academy, no day is wasted. It was time to master the absolute basics of magic. He explained the core of their power, an invisible energy called ether. By channeling ether through their magical circuits, they could manifest spells. The professor wondered if this was too basic for students who might already be masters. As the lecture wrapped up, Gray felt a pit in his stomach. He was stuck in the same class as the infamous Leon Hart. He prayed that Leon Hart would never find out his secret status as the legendary Divine Eye student. But the professor's eyes were sharp. He called Gray out for losing focus even though he was hiding in the very back row. Gray was caught off guard. The professor made a challenge. If they were so confident, it was time to show off their power. He was sure these students already mastered basic magic. Even though they were in the swordsmanship course, the professor knew that neglecting your magical potential was a path to failure. For a swordsman, understanding magic is vital for coordinating with mages on the battlefield. It is the difference between life and death. Gray realized this explanation was identical to what he had learned back at the brutal training camp. He figured the exercise would be the same old drill. Was he really about to just fire another basic ether projectile? The professor saw Gray's familiar look and asked if he could perform. Gray confirmed it. He had learned the basics back at the camp. Sensing an opportunity, the professor turned the demo into a duel. Since Leon Hart also knew the technique, the two were ordered to face off. Leon Hart stepped up, boasting that he had been trained in magic long before entering these walls. The professor knew there was a power gap, but a simple projectile would not be lethal. Then he dropped the bomb. Gray was this year's Divine Eye. Suddenly, every eye in the room was pinned on Gray. He was fuming. The professor had just exposed his secret identity to everyone. He stood up, ready to show them what he could do. Meanwhile, Leon Hart was eager to give these students a brutal lesson on the academy's true nature. The professor ordered Gray to step forward. On his signal, both students were to fire their ether projectiles directly at each other. Gray's heart sank. He had only practiced this for a few days on the battlefield. He was not sure he would walk away from this in one piece. The signal dropped. Leon Hart poured his power into a projectile, determined to show everyone the massive gap in their strength. Gray fired back with his own ether. The two magical spheres collided mid-air, clashing with a violent surge of energy. But then, Gray's sphere tore through the other, surging toward a visibly terrified Leon Hart. The professor leaped in, conjuring a shield just in time. But even his barrier shattered, resulting in a massive, deafening explosion. The shockwave rocked the entire room. The professor rushed to Leon Hart's side, desperate to see if the boy was still breathing. Leon was alive, but barely. If that barrier had not been there, he would be dead. The other students were left wondering, how did Gray do that? Gray was genuinely confused. To him, that spell felt incredibly weak. Was the projectile magic he learned in the subjugation squad really that different from what these elite students knew? The professor was stunned. It wasn't about size. Gray's projectile quality was on a different level. This wasn't just magic. It was super compressed ether, a legendary power that even the strongest professors have difficulty producing. Yet, Gray had manifested it perfectly on his very first try. The professor admitted he had never seen a projectile with that much raw destructive power. No one in the academy could replicate it. Suddenly, everyone agreed Gray deserved his spot, but Gray knew something was very, very wrong. To Gray, every soldier in his squad fought like this. He wondered if they were mocking him after all. Shouldn't anyone be able to do this with practice? The professor chuckled and offered Gray a direct transfer to the elite magic course with a personal recommendation. But get this, Gray actually turned the offer down without a second thought. The professor realized Gray performed super ether compression at his age. He called Gray an unparalleled prodigy, even for an academy filled with top-tier geniuses. He slammed anyone who said Gray had no talent. The students were shocked because this professor never praises anyone, let alone talks this much to a kid. He declared it would be a literal crime against magic if Gray didn't study it. Meanwhile, Gray remembered where he learned that rare ether compression technique. In ancient times, people didn't even understand the true nature of compressed ether, or life force. His teacher once explained that casting magic was brutal because it required compressing energy inside your own body before letting it loose. In the future, this is seen as weak junk. Gray casually asked the professor if he knew about OD. From the master's blank look, Gray realized the world in this era had zero knowledge of OD. This changed everything. His knowledge was actually from the future, so he had to be extremely careful with his secrets. Gray stayed firm. He loved the sword way too much to switch courses. The professor respected the choice but told Gray his door was always open if he changed his mind. Back at his seat, the professor said he wouldn't even scold Gray for not paying attention anymore. The lecture was too basic for him, and he could leave whenever he wanted. The other students couldn't believe it. Even Leon Hart started looking at Gray with a completely different attitude. Later on, Professor Ariel sent a letter demanding Gray come to her office right after class. Gray figured the fencing teacher complained and he was about to get lectured. But the second he stepped through the door, he was ambushed by a sudden lethal attack. A girl with blue hair lunged at him with a sword. Gray's body reacted on instinct, effortlessly blocking the strike. He recognized her from somewhere. Right then, Ariel confirmed her theory about Gray's skills was spot on. She revealed that Bella hadn't held back at all, and Gray's defense was flawless. Gray realized he was facing Bella Albright, the sorceress. Ariel basically told the other professors they should quit if they couldn't even see that Bella was going for the kill. They admitted their mistake and handed over some cash. Turns out they were literally betting on whether Gray would survive the ambush. Since she won the bet, Ariel casually tossed a gold coin over to Gray as a reward. But the professors noticed something. Gray didn't use his dominant arm. It looked like he was protecting a hidden injury that was much worse than it seemed on the surface. Gray was stunned. They could figure all that out just by watching him. Ariel reminded him they wouldn't be World Union Academy professors otherwise. Ariel revealed she had been onto him since the entrance exam. That's why she made the bet before dismissing the other faculty members. They warned Gray that if his injury didn't heal, he'd be forced out of the academy for good. Once they were alone, Ariel wanted to talk magic. She heard Gray use compressed ether in his other classes. Professor Carlos actually wanted Gray in the magic course, but Ariel refused. She believed Gray was meant for the sword, not just casting spells. She could see right through him with a single glance. Realizing there was no point in lying, Gray decided to be honest. She wanted to know his secret trick and promised to keep it quiet and even offered him a reward. Ariel's real interest was Bella Albright. Gray almost slipped up and called her a sorceress, which would have been bad. Ariel explained that while Bella was a genius at theory, she couldn't actually compress ether in practice. Gray had heard she was struggling, and now he finally understood why. But here's the thing: Gray knew a way to use super compressed ether without actually having to perform the compression at all. This meant Bella wouldn't have to see Professor Bradley. Gray's heart dropped at the mention of Varian Bradley. Everyone knew that name. Varian Bradley was a monster in the magic world who performed horrific human experiments that ended in murder. In the future, he'd cause massive magical disasters that would take thousands of innocent lives. He hadn't been caught yet. Ariel explained that if Bella didn't master super compressed ether by the end of the year, she'd be sent to Bradley for surgery. Gray was horrified. That surgery was just a sick excuse for another human experiment under the guise of helping her magic. It wasn't public yet, but Ariel already knew people were dying because of Bradley's twisted work. Bella was terrified, but it was either the surgery or getting expelled from the academy by the end of the year. Ariel would rather have Bella leave the academy than let her body be mutilated by Bradley. This was secret knowledge that shouldn't even exist yet. Gray was scared that by revealing what he knew, he might accidentally change the entire course of history. But looking back at the annihilation of humanity, he decided he'd rather change that hellish future. He was going to teach Bella himself. They headed to the arena and signed a magical contract. Neither of them could ever speak about what Gray was about to show them. Once he finished, Gray asked Bella and Professor Ariel what they thought of his teaching. Ariel was completely blown away by the depth of his knowledge. Bella found the whole explanation simple, organized, and absolutely brilliant. It's like she's attending a magic class from hundreds of years in the future. Gray just pushed magical history forward by a whole century. What they didn't know was that Gray's knowledge came from Bella herself, 10 years in the future, but he's keeping that secret hidden. Ariel is stunned. She can't even judge if this wild information is real. Bella, though, is all in. Nothing contradicts current theories, and besides, the fastest way to find the truth is testing it right now. If Gray is right, the spell will work. Bella grips her staff, channels her power, and begins the invocation. Gray remembers the legends. Bella's full power could incinerate a city, but the rumors say she's never been able to control that output. An intense glow ignites. Then boom. The explosion is so violent it makes Gray scream. He's trapped in the crossfire of a massive fire tower. If Bella hadn't seized control, Gray would be nothing but ash. Flames climb Gray's arm, but then they stop. Bella barely saved his life. Bella is smiling. She finally controlled the ether like Gray taught. Then, a massive fire dragon erupts from her staff. But then, her energy hits zero. Bella collapses. Ariel explains her magic source is completely drained. To Ariel, it's a miracle. Bella mastered god-tier magic in no time. Even unconscious, Bella mutters that the theory is incredible, not her. Little does she know that theory is actually her own future masterpiece. Ariel realizes the truth. Since Bella can compress ether, that dangerous surgery is no longer needed. Ariel is relieved they dodged that risky surgery. Most importantly, Bella didn't lose control of her massive power. That surgery boosts power by breaking a person's natural limiters, but you lose all control. It's a deal with the devil. That's why ancient sorceresses were so feared. Massive power, but zero control. Gray held up his end. Now, it's Ariel's turn to fulfill the contract. Ariel prepares her magic to heal Gray's wounded arm. Glowing butterflies swarm Gray's limb. In seconds, his right arm is moving perfectly again. Gray is stunned. Potions failed, but Ariel warns him not to compare her magic to common trash. Draw the sword. Gray unsheathes it, and the movement feels normal. He strikes with lightning speed, but something is off. His soul remains deeply wounded. Ariel admits modern magic hasn't proven souls exist yet, but she knows the truth. She can see them with her secret eye. Gray's soul is healing, but it'll take time and rest. Gray considers quitting, but Ariel says to train. She must understand this soul-scarring style. A style that moves swords with the soul. Does he know Amy White? Amy White, the future sword saint. Gray's style looks like he learned it from her. But get this, his mentor is even more skilled than Amy. He knows Amy will eventually reach his master's level. He just claims he learned back home. Gray pivots. Is it really possible for swords to damage the soul? Ariel says common swordplay never could. Then she asks, did he use that mysterious power hidden inside? Her shining eye sees everything. His power is leaking through that chain door. Gray is stunned. She's not guessing. She's seen an aura exactly like his before. Are there others? She confirms it. They're not human. They're called liquidators. One look at Gray's face says it all. He knows that name. Ariel didn't expect the liquidator name to be known. Nothing surprises her now. Forbidden knowledge from the future. What does he really know? Gray doesn't hold back. Liquidators are an extinction-level threat. They must be destroyed immediately. Ariel agrees. Bradley is obsessed with experiments. What's the link? The liquidator is exactly what Bradley is trying to summon. Gray is horrified. What he didn't know. The liquidator is man-made. This changes everything. Gray must shut down this experiment now. Ariel can't help. The person in charge is her equal. No authority. Gray asks the final question. Who are these superiors? But Ariel is stuck. She cannot reveal her superiors without a direct order from the top. And right now, nobody has the power to stop this twisted experiment from moving forward. Gray realizes the academy hierarchy is more untouchable than he thought. But here is the thing, the fact that Bradley is a total criminal should be enough to flip the script. See, in Gray's previous life, this insane professor's experiments killed dozens of innocent women. And Gray? He knows exactly where those fatal labs are hidden from the world. He knows exactly where the illegal research is happening right now and tells Ariel they need to catch him red-handed. But the professor warns him that it is not that simple. Breaking in would be a crime, and without solid proof, they would both find themselves behind bars before they could even blink. She asks if Gray has any hard evidence. If not, they have to drop it. Even knowing Bradley is a monster, their hands are tied by the rules of the academy. Then, the professor shifts focus to Gray's mysterious power and asks if he is finally ready to master it. She mentions a legendary expert at the academy named Heathcote Longfellow. Gray's eyes widen. This is the same man who trained the legendary sword saint herself. This changes everything for him. Ariel promises to set up private training with the master starting first thing tomorrow morning. Gray came to this academy specifically to control this power, so he thanks her instantly. He did not expect to find a lead this fast. By the next day, he meets the master and starts running, and he does not stop. But then he starts wondering why he is just running. Is this really the elite training he was promised? Longfellow notices Gray's mind is drifting as they sprint through the forest. He tells him to pick up the pace and stop thinking. He needs to run until his body hits its absolute limit. Only after every drop of physical strength is gone will his soul finally awaken. Longfellow makes it clear as long as Gray has energy left, he will not even touch a sword. Gray figures there must be a method to the madness, but while he runs, he cannot stop thinking about the dark experiments Bailey and Bradley are conducting. Is he really supposed to be training while a killer is on the loose? A week later, Ariel checks in to see how his time with Longfellow is going. Gray sighs, explaining they have done nothing but run, with only a tiny bit of sword work at the very end. When Gray says he feels stronger, Ariel just nods. That is typical Longfellow. But then, a butler rushes in with an urgent letter for the professor. This looks bad. Ariel's face turns grim. The report says Bella Albright is producing supercompressed ether, a power that is nearly impossible to handle. You and I know this spells big trouble. But the report has a twist. While Bella's power looks the same, further tests prove she is not actually compressing it, it is all a lie. Because of that, her new ability cannot be officially recognized as the real deal. Still, the villains state the contract is valid and the operation is a go. To Gray, this letter is pure insanity. They are pushing forward despite the risks. Ariel realizes Bradley is determined to force Bella into surgery. The contract is locked down tight with no loopholes, making it almost impossible for the poor girl to say no. The only way out is if Bradley cancels it himself, or if Bella gets expelled from the academy entirely. Either way, the clock is ticking and things are getting tense. Ariel turns to Gray and asks for his help to finish this mission. She demands to know the location of the secret lab so they can expose him as a criminal. Gray just smirks, reminding her of what she said earlier about the danger of going in without proof. But Ariel is putting her faith in him now. She is willing to risk everything to find the evidence that will put Bradley away. She reveals that she has trusted him from the start. Her divine eye already confirmed that Gray has been telling the truth this whole time. Talk about a major reveal. She asks Gray to lead the way so they can bring these crimes to light. Gray reveals the lab is hidden near Torwell village. Ariel remembers that mountain. It actually houses a laboratory officially authorized by the academy itself. Gray realizes the genius of the plan. Bradley is running illegal experiments in a place that is technically legal. Ariel knows no spot is better for hiding dark secrets than that. Nobody would ever suspect a thing since Bradley spends all his time there anyway. It is the perfect cover. Plus, no professor ever interferes with a colleague's lab. Ariel concludes that as long as they get proof first, they will be safe from any accusations of illegal trespassing. Suddenly, Bella knocks and enters the room. She looks terrified, telling Professor Ariel that she just received her own letter from Bradley. The pressure is on. Ariel takes the letter and tells her student not to worry, she is going to handle this situation personally. Bella asks if the professor is really going to confront him just for her sake. Ariel simply replies that she is more than capable of taking care of business. Gray steps in, saying he is helping too. It is his problem now, and Bella insists on joining the fight. Ariel is worried. This insane professor performs human experiments, and who knows what he would do if he captured one of them. The risk is just too high for students. Gray argues that is exactly why she cannot go alone. He reminds her he has the same power that took down General Ogre, and he is ready to use it again. Bella stands her ground as well, asking Ariel to let them decide their own fates. They are not just regular students anymore. Ariel realizes there is no stopping them. Gray and Bella are going after Bradley whether she likes it or not. Fine, she will let them come, but on one condition. No matter what happens in that lab, they must prioritize their own lives above everything else. The students give her their word. They reach the mountains and find the hidden facility. Bella can't believe her eyes that Bradley is actually doing these horrific things in a place like this. Ariel is certain. She tells them they need to move fast and find the evidence before they are spotted. Gray is 100% sure this is the spot. Bella trusts them both but asks if they can really pull this off without getting caught. Ariel explains that Bradley is away at a magic conference right now. The main entrance is likely rigged with deadly traps, so they need to sneak in through the side. Stick with me, things are about to get wild. Breaking into a school-sanctioned lab was a major crime, but at that moment it was a total necessity. Professor Ariel offered Bella a way out if she felt uneasy, but Bella Albright stood firm in their mission. Ariel reminded Bella this wasn't just about her, while Gray insisted that stopping these experiments was for the greater good. If they didn't act now, countless lives would be sacrificed. Ariel thought that sounded dramatic, but she knew the experiments had to stop. They weren't just risking their lives for Bella. They charged forward, unleashing high-speed spells directly at the laboratory's defenses. A massive explosion blew the doors open to clear the traps. They stepped through the wreckage and saw a total nightmare. People were rotting in cells, visibly starving. Ariel realized finding proof of the villain's crimes was going to be way too easy. One quick glance revealed 14 forbidden spells. That alone was enough to put them away for a very long time. But the unauthorized human testing was the ultimate sin. In the center sat an altar dripping with candles and dark magic. The plan was to grab the evidence and run, but they wondered if the prisoners needed a rescue right this second. Gray warned there was no time, but then, the villains emerged from the shadows and caught them completely off guard. Ariel demanded to know about the conference, but the professor revealed he'd sent a double just to finish his secret work. He bragged about getting fresh materials for his research. His twisted goal was to use them while they were still fresh. But seeing 3 intruders changed everything. He wanted test subjects with actual magical potential anyway, not just ordinary people. He had no idea how they found his lab, but he was certain nobody else knew they were even there. If they all vanished, no one would suspect a thing. Their sacrifice would simply push the limits of magic to the edge. He couldn't let them leave alive, so he decided to put them to use. Suddenly, a massive magical strike hit him. Bella Albright unleashed an explosion from her staff. The villain shielded himself, actually impressed by the magnificent force of the spell. He praised Ariel's divine eye and the student's exceptional talent. He assumed this special admission student was something truly special. He wanted to study these recruits up close. To him, an academy student trying to assassinate her professor was just a hilarious trick. She missed her chance. Ariel ordered a retreat since they had the evidence it was time to let the Academy handle this mess. But the villain wasn't letting them go. He started channeling dark magic, determined to end their lives right there. He fired his curse, but Ariel threw up a barrier just in time. Bella breathed a sigh of relief that was way too close. He called it the devouring flame, a cursed fire that eats defensive magic to grow even more powerful and unstoppable. It required rare ingredients but was supposedly invincible. Professor Ariel fought to hold the line, but the task was getting impossible. Her barrier started to crack as the flames broke through. She told Bella to take the evidence bag to Grey and run. She hoped Heathcote would know what to do with it, but as the shield buckled, Bella added her own defensive magic. Ariel screamed at her to get out, but Bella saw the shield failing and told the professor to leave the rest to her. Professor Ariel suddenly remembered the promise they made to prioritize their own lives above everything else. This magic was abnormal and standard defenses were useless. The barrier shattered, and Ariel prepared to buy them some time. But then, Bella stepped up with a new shield. She claimed his fire wasn't that potent, she just needed a different technique. However, the secret to stopping the devouring flame was supposed to be known only by high-level mages like the villains. Bella dropped a bombshell. Someone had recently taught her the theory. The villain was suddenly overcome by a wave of intense hatred. He demanded the traitor's name, promising a quick death. Bella just gave him a cold reply that it was a total secret. She hinted the traitor was actually a student from the fencing course, recalling all the lessons the protagonist had coached her through. Realizing she was just playing with him, the villain grabbed a crystal and vowed to burn them all alive. He crushed the stone, and tormented souls swarmed the heroes, turning into living black flames that wanted to devour them. They merged into one massive, terrifying entity of darkness. Grey asked if she was okay, and Bella promised the barrier would hold. But her mana was hitting 0. She told Grey he had to attack while she focused every bit of strength on the defense. Ariel activated her divine eye to strike back. She spotted a weak point in the fire and prepared to launch a counterattack. She funneled her mana through the barrier, launching powerful bolts of electricity straight at the villain's weak spot. The villain saw Ariel's attempt to counter. However, the bolts didn't even come close to touching him. Grey realized Ariel's offensive magic was too weak. The black flames were just absorbing her spells and using them as fuel. Bella was stumbling, completely out of mana. This was exactly why Ariel had insisted they flee the laboratory earlier. Grey knew this was a disaster. He'd insisted on this fight from the start, and now they were all facing a total dead end. Stick with me, because Ariel just warned our hero that using this power could cause permanent, irreversible damage. Grey swallows hard and nods in agreement. Meanwhile, Bella's completely confused. She feels 0 ether and asks if this terrifying power is even considered magic. Calling power this massive simple magic was a joke, and Ariel knows it. She tells Bella to drop the investigation entirely and never speak about what she witnessed here. Professor Ariel's warning is chilling. Either promise to stay silent or have your memories wiped right now. Bella agrees and asks if they should make another magical contract. Ariel nods and a glowing magical document appears right between them. Time to sign. Once the deal is done, Grey shifts focus. They need to help the victims of these twisted experiments immediately. The victims are just under a deep sleep spell, but they're not safe here. They need to be moved to the Academy's medical bay immediately. Ariel wraps them in protective magic cocoons. With the survivors safe, it's time to see how deep this rabbit hole really goes. But get this, the laboratory was using human sacrifices. This wasn't just some illegal research, it was pure, unadulterated evil. These lives were ground up into catalysts to boost human limits. But even after all that, there's still no sign of the liquidator in this building. Grey feels a cold chill. This place looks exactly like the site where 10,000 people were slaughtered in his past life. Producing catalysts alone couldn't have caused such a massacre. Grey finally understands that the miasma erupting from deep underground was what actually wiped out everyone in his past world. He freezes in pure dread, and the girls notice. Grey is certain of one thing: something terrifying is hidden beneath this laboratory. He tells the girls there must be a secret floor hidden further down. There were no hidden doors, but Ariel's divine eye sees what others miss. She detects lingering traces of short-distance teleportation magic that was used here recently. There is a chamber accessible only by teleportation, 300 meters below. Ariel tells Grey she can reach it by opening a short-distance teleportation portal of her own. She focuses her power and activates a complex, glowing teleportation circle. Ariel warns that a mistake means landing inside solid rock, but then, the portal opens, revealing a massive world of strange structures beneath the earth. They never imagined a space this vast existed beneath the lab. Ariel feels an overwhelming amount of ether before spotting the massive main structure standing right in the center. This thing wasn't just leaking ether, it was pulsing with a strange, dark energy different from magic. It's the most intense power Ariel has ever felt. Grey knows that feeling immediately. It's the power of the liquidator. They slowly approach the central structure. They reach the central chamber and find a door with a haunting symbol, surrounded by an ominous ritual pentagram and flickering candles. Power floods the room. The liquidator isn't here. Ariel knocks on the door, and while Bella is terrified of what's inside, the professor just tells her to relax. Ariel swings it open. It was just a hollow symbol for a ritual that wasn't even active yet. The door itself has no power. The real power is in the magic circles on the floor. But then, you and I see one of those circles start throwing off violent, dangerous sparks. Suddenly, the entire magic circle activates with an intense, blinding glow. Gray is in shock, wondering if Ariel is trying to summon the liquidator to their location. Bella can feel the impact of the dangerous magic, but Ariel tells them to wait. Her prediction says this structure cannot summon the liquidator. But then, the space around the door begins to tear apart. They watch in absolute despair until the entire system suddenly breaks down and shuts off. Ariel realizes these machines weren't for summoning. They were designed to rip open a small rift to another dimension. They are siphoning power directly from the liquidator's realm. And the core for this? It's fueled by stolen human lives. Ariel notes that 10 souls have been consumed already. It is a molding process that requires sacrifice, and she realizes the people upstairs were just raw material for this ritual. Bella is horrified. Why would anyone go this far for power? What is the real objective behind all this slaughter? Ariel explains the black flames and the crystal they found were just the blueprint. They are testing exactly how these flames will act once they are perfected for war. And it's not just flames. If they start mass-producing these conduits, no one knows what they will do with that much power. As the rifts fade, the hunter asks the big question. Was Bradley even trying to bring the liquidator here at all? Ariel doesn't know, but Bradley failed because the spatial circles hit their limit. This was the absolute maximum they were able to set up. Bella's stunned. Space folding magic this powerful is completely unheard of. Ariel agrees building just one of these machines would cost an entire nation's budget. It is insane. There are 8 of them. Only a massive, global organization could afford to fund a project this insane. Bella thinks of the Discar Empire, but Ariel shuts that down. Even as the world's largest country, the Empire lacks the magical research to create crystals of this caliber. Ariel is looking for an organization whose research is even more advanced than the Empire itself. The hunter suggests the World Union Academy, and Ariel nods. No other research institution on Earth could sustain a budget on this massive scale. Bella is shocked to hear the Academy is behind this. After all, the World Union Academy is supposed to defend the world, not be the ones creating threats. Ariel knows it's hard to believe, but no other group on Earth is capable of such a feat. Our hero argues that the whole Academy can't be evil. Most of them have to still be on their side in this upcoming battle. Looking back, we know the Academy's elite were the ones who fought the liquidator directly. They protected the civilians until the very end, and they might still be heroes. Imagine finding out your school isn't just a place to learn, but a den of monsters. Our hero just saw the future, and it's terrifying the very academy he trusts might be humanity's greatest enemy. However, the academy is hiding secrets that go way deeper than anyone knows. Bradley didn't just stumble into those resources, he had massive, high-level support from the shadows. Someone very powerful is pulling the strings. Bella is worried they can't trust anyone anymore. Ariel has been watching from the inside for decades, and her verdict? Not good. She confirms it with absolute certainty. This place is not a trustworthy organization. Most people here think they're heroes, convinced that these horrific experiments are for the greater good. But the real truth? It's buried in the darkness, and someone wants it to stay there forever. The hunter needs a name. Is there any way to find the mastermind behind this mess? 0 clues. Ariel can't find a single trace, no devices, no mana, nothing. The cleanup was perfect, but just as she's about to call it quits, boom, the whole place starts to explode. It's a trap. Evidence elimination mechanisms were triggered the second Bradley left the building just to bury the truth. The plan was simple: lure the investigators inside, then blow them to kingdom come. They weren't taking any chances. Bella's losing it because the walls are literally caving in. But Ariel's a total boss. She tells everyone to stay calm because academy professors aren't that easy to kill. She slams down a massive defensive shield, refusing to go out in such a pathetic way. Stay inside the magic circle, she warns. If you step out, you're dead. Debris rains down, but the shield holds firm. At the very last second, a flash of light teleports the entire group and the hostages to safety. They actually made it. Bella and our hunter were certain this was the end, but every single captive managed to get out alive. The teleport was slow because of the heavy load, but Ariel pulled off the impossible. Pure legend status. The academy can't look away now. The next day, Ariel marches straight to the board of directors to demand some real answers about what went down. The director plays it cool, thanking them for stopping Bradley's rogue experiments while the survivors recover in the medical wing. But something feels off. Then comes the shocker: those machines Bradley had? Each one cost more than an entire country's budget. Think about that for a second. There were 8 of them. No way Bradley acquired those on a teacher's salary. They're stolen goods, intercepted during transport. 78 agents were wiped out to get that tech. The group is stunned. The people responsible for this massacre might be walking the same halls as them. Traitors could be anywhere in the academy, and Ariel knows there is no way to tell friend from foe. The realization hits hard and leaves them outraged. These criminals are protected by the system itself. They're basically untouchable. Ariel's fuming. How are new students supposed to grow when the entire system is rigged against them from the start? The director drops a bomb. Even criminals are welcomed here if they have talent. Bella thinks it's insane. She wants justice, not training. But the director just shrugs. The superiors don't care. Even as a director, he's just another subordinate following orders. He's the public face, but his authority is insignificant. Now pay attention, he says. They can only find the real masters if they get a lot stronger. Prove your worth and you'll get to see how deep this rabbit hole really goes. He hints at a veteran with enough pull to change everything. Gray hears that and makes a silent vow he'll become stronger than any veteran to rewrite the rules. Power is the only currency here. The director finds it strange that Ariel couldn't handle Bradley alone. He's testing her limits. He knows the truth. One of those two students was the one who actually took Bradley down. The director's eye is sharp. He's dying to see what kind of monster Ariel's going to train. Meanwhile, Gray walks away, noticing strange marks growing on his back. Power is the law. If he wants to take down the liquidator, he has to uncover the rot at the center of it all. Step 1: focus on training. But suddenly, swoosh. A random boy appears out of nowhere and tries to kick Gray's head off. Gray blocks it just in time. The attacker is annoyed that Gray isn't just some weakling he can bully. This is getting heated. The kid starts trash-talking, saying Gray's a rejected special student who doesn't belong in these elite corridors. Talk about a massive ego. Gray asks if he's looking for trouble, and the kid's ready until Ariel shows up and ruins his little power trip. He bails instantly. With the extra security, he can't risk a scene. But this confirms that Bradley's already sending his goons to cause real trouble. That kid was a setup. He runs straight to a teacher, lying through his teeth that Gray was the one who attacked him. He claims trash like those special dimension students shouldn't even be allowed to walk through the academy corridors. But the teacher, Arya, isn't buying it. No injuries, no proof. She looks at Gray and basically tells him to go finish the job. Gray and Ariel are floored. Arya says she technically shouldn't allow it, but hey, she's happy to look the other way while he beats him up. But Gray plays it cool. He doesn't want more drama. Arya wonders why everyone hates the special dimension students so much. Mocking is one thing, Gray says, but this is the first time someone's actually tried to take his head off. Things are escalating fast. Arya hates seeing them treated like dirt. Gray doesn't blame her though. He knows she sacrificed her scholarship for this, and he's not letting that go. Bella's fired up too. It's time to prove that choosing them wasn't a mistake, it was a revolution. Gray noted his teacher had a divine eye. These special students were destined to be legends against the liquidator. Ariel thanked him but warned this wasn't someone else's problem. Out of everyone, she expected the most from Gray. Amy, Luke, and Jacob were elites bound for greatness, but for the first time, she believed a human could surpass humanity. That person was Gray, though the pressure felt heavy. Still, he pushed those weak thoughts aside. The mastermind behind Vian was definitely still plotting the liquidator's arrival. Gray regressed to this timeline to kill that monster. Now, the world's fate rests on him as fencing class begins. Pairs were assigned. Gray stayed focused for real combat. He knew the other students were just waiting to trash-talk his group. Then it happened. He was paired with Leon Hart Apes, the top-ranked monster of the first year. The instructions? No mercy. Gray knew better. Their skills weren't similar at all. Gray felt out of his league fighting the #1 student on day 1. But he knew Leon Hart harbored a deep grudge against Divine Eye students and was looking for any excuse to draw blood. Leon Hart Apes approached with a calm, chilling satisfaction. He was actually honored to trade blows with the new star of the class. Leon admitted he had trained harder than anyone else just for the chance to cross blades with Gray. That smile, pure hunger. He was relishing a legal chance to fight. They headed to the center. Chaos erupted. Leon lunged instantly, and Gray barely blocked that heavy strike. A brutal horizontal slash sent Gray flying back. Leon pressed on, his aura literally screaming. Gray countered with a heavy blow, but the blonde prodigy parried it like nothing. Leon was impressed. Gray was strong. The blades blurred as they traded blows. Gray thought he'd fold instantly. Leon's brute strength was overwhelming, even with a two-handed grip. This wasn't just talent. Leon's swordsmanship was perfected to a terrifying degree. Past life experience? Not enough. Current training? Still struggling. Leon was advancing like a true monster. The whole room went silent. Gray was actually keeping up with the #1. Leon was having the time of his life. Gray? His stamina was hitting 0 fast. Without Heathcote's training, he'd be dead. Meanwhile, Leon wasn't even breathing hard. He was losing gas. If he didn't end this now, it was over. The rule? Fight like it's real. Then, he saw Leon's opening. Gray ducked, planted his hand, and launched a kick that swept Leon's feet out. Leon froze, shocked by the dirty move, but the fight ended with both blades at throats. Gray called it a draw, but Leon wouldn't accept it. In that final second, while Gray just swung his sword, Leon could have easily gone for a fatal strike if it were a real battle. Leon aimed for the heart, holding back because it was only a simulation. That gesture said it all. Leon Hart admitted defeat. Gray realized the gap. Practice is one thing, a life or death struggle is another. Gray apologized for the kick, calling it cheating. But wait, the teacher said real. Not cheating then. Leon immediately demanded another round. Gray knew Leon was underestimating himself. In a real life or death fight, Gray wouldn't stand a chance. It wasn't just skill, Leon's insane stamina put him in a completely different league. Suddenly, an arrogant student interrupted. Fencing means swords only, no kicking, no games. He couldn't stand seeing a special student trade blows with the best. He mocked Gray's magic, telling him to stop acting like he belonged there. Leon fired back that the professor chose Gray as his only worthy opponent. The instructor agreed, confirming she had paired students based on their overall combat strength. She insisted Gray was the only match for Leon. If this loudmouth disagreed, he was welcome to defeat Gray and take his place on the battlefield. Desperate to prove himself, the student bragged about crushing the entrance examiner. Dylan saw it immediately. This guy was underestimating Gray's true strength. He's treating him like a sideshow. Gray's true power finally needed some recognition. But here's the real mistake: he interrupted Leon's precious time with Gray. For that crime, Leon decided this annoying student deserved nothing less than death. The teacher offered the fake stages for those who hated the real combat rule, but the challenge was set. Gray knew this arrogant student wouldn't be an easy fight since he earned his spot through the standard academy trials. Gray knew he was totally outclassed. Years of elite nutrition and conditioning simply could not be beaten by a little extra training. His confidence was non-existent, but since he would not get expelled for losing this match, he decided to step up anyway. The teacher told them to play nice. Yeah, right. Both boys took their stances and charged at each other with blinding speed. His opponent Leon was a total jerk, calling Gray a loser to his face. Sparks flew as their swords collided in a brutal clash. But then, Gray twisted his wrist, sending Leon flying. Wait, why was this guy so weak? His strikes felt like absolutely nothing. Gray thought he was holding back. But what he did not know was that Leon was actually falling backward, losing his grip, head first into the dirt. Just like that, the teacher stepped in and called the whole fight right then and there. The teacher felt bad, saying she missed the sword and hit the kid instead. Leon just complained about being caught off guard. Crying like a baby with a bloody face, he demanded a rematch. Surprisingly, the teacher let it happen. The beatdown would continue. Leon charged again with everything he had. The result? Exactly the same. Another round of Leon crying on the floor, badly beaten. Enough was enough. Seeing the kid in such bad shape, the teacher ended it and sent him straight to the infirmary. Now, you and I should pay attention here. Gray and Leon were chosen to face the second-year champion. A massive jump. This inter-year battle was basically a slaughterhouse. First-year students had already lost 35 times in a row. Not exactly great odds. The professor made it clear a year at this academy is an eternity. Losing to a senior was just part of the job. Surviving was a win. Winning? That would be a miracle. She told them to relax, but being called was already a huge privilege. Honestly, Gray expected something way more intense. If this was the elite level, he was not exactly shaking in his boots. This was his shot. As a special admission student, Gray was determined to train until he could crush that second-year champion. Meanwhile, things were getting heated at the school board meeting. Professor Boudra had one goal: kick Amy White out of the school. Amy was part of the Divine Eye program, but she had failed her advancement exam. Boudra was smelling blood in the water. He claimed it was totally unfair. Why should a failure get to stay just because of some fancy special admission title? But Ariel stood her ground. She knew Amy had a secret. A severe physical side effect was locking away her true power. Boudra was not buying it. To him, it was just the same old excuse to turn a useless student into a hidden prodigy. Ariel argued that if they broke her now, she would never reach her full potential. They were playing with fire. Boudra was fuming. He wanted standards, not charity cases. He was not about to let the academy reputation slide for a maybe, but that is the point. The academy is for exceptional talent, and sometimes that talent does not fit into a conventional box. Boudra fired back, saying these special spots were being wasted on people who just did not have what it takes anymore. He pointed at Amy and the others, claiming the legendary Divine Eye program had officially lost its edge. It was dying. Then came the bombshell. They wanted to abolish the program entirely. Ariel was stunned. Years of history, gone just like that. The other professors agreed. The current crop of students just was not cutting it. The spark was gone, replaced by mediocrity. Even Bella, who was improving, was dismissed. Why? Because her mana was too low. In their eyes, she was a dead end. The room was split. Half wanted to keep the legacy alive, the other half wanted to bury it. It was a deadlock. Ariel realized she was more alone than she imagined. The voices against her were growing louder by the second. Boudra twisted the knife, calling the program outdated. He even challenged her ability to even recognize real talent anymore. She wanted to scream, but she held back. These professors already disliked her, and one wrong word would end everything. She had to be smart. If she wanted to save her students, she could not give them any more reasons to turn. Boudra kept at it, saying she was past her prime. Even the respectful professors were basically telling her to hang it up. Retire while you still have a legacy, they said. It was an insult disguised as advice, and it really stung. They laughed, telling her to open her own school if she wanted to play favorites. Who would even follow her now? Ariel knew the truth. She could see the talent burning inside those kids. They just needed more time to let it explode. She just had to buy them that time. If she could stop the expulsions, they would eventually prove everyone wrong. Desperate for a lifeline, a name finally came up. Gray Lee. One professor had heard he was actually quite promising. Budra did not believe a word of it. To him, Gray was just another disappointment waiting to happen. Not promising at all. The deal was set. The future of the entire Divine Eye program now rested on Gray's results in the next competition. Ariel mentioned that Gray only shines in desperate situations. But the professor was furious. This changed everything for the young student. He snapped back. If he cannot show it in practice, he will never survive a real fight. Gray's true test starts now. Ariel snapped back. They just didn't get it. Gray's style is nothing like your standard swordsmanship. Alexandra cuts the meeting short. No progress here. He decides, let's just watch the Divine Eye student in action. You and I know that this changed everything. It is all on the line. One fight to decide the program's future. Budra just smiles. He cannot wait to see Gray fail. Ariel feels completely powerless. Heathcote sees her sinking. She knows Gray's true power was never meant for these fake simulations. Time. That is what he needs. But they are demanding the impossible right now. Still, she prays Gray can guide these high-potential kids. She needs him to protect their future. Finally, the big day arrives. It is first years versus the second years. Let's go. The fighters step up. First, we have Leon Hart, the top-ranked first-year student. Then there is Lionel Hartman, the second-year ace. Alongside him is our hero, Gray Lee, and his opponent, Debel Redardal. Gray instantly recognizes Deblay, the same jerk who kicked him in the hallway for no reason. Every professor is in the stands. They are all here to see if the hype is real. Leon Hart is confused. Why are there so many teachers? Even the second-year ace admits he has never seen a crowd like this. Last year, only 3 showed up. Today, it feels like the entire academy faculty is watching them. Apius claims they are here for Gray. But then Budra steps in. The Divine Eye admission is on the line. It is now or never. Then comes the bombshell. The Divine Eye class is being abolished. Gray stands there, frozen. Is this actually happening? Ariel stays quiet. If she tells Gray the truth, he will break himself. She is terrified he will use that forbidden power and die. She tells him it is just Budra talking trash. Stay focused, she says. Do not let him get in your head. But get this, Gray sees what we see. His teacher is literally trembling. He plays along, but he knows Budra wants them humiliated today. Budra is banking on a pathetic loss. He wants to prove the Divine Eye is just a failed experiment to everyone. Gray is not having it. No one insults teacher Ariel and gets away with it, not on his watch. Budra just mocks them, calling them senile. But Gray fires back. He is going to prove every single one of them wrong. Budra is fuming. Arrogant brat, he thinks. The team split up. It is time to prepare for the slaughter. Ariel appreciates the support, but she is worried. If Gray fought a normal student, his practical skills might give him a chance. But what they didn't know was that he was facing the worst possible rival. Debel is a literal monster. Brain surgery turned his reflexes into something inhuman. He is the ultimate hard counter to Gray's stealthy ambush tactics. Ariel is terrified. She begs him, do not worry about me, and please, do not push yourself to the brink. Gray just gives her a relaxed look. I got this, he says. The announcement rings out. The top students are up first. Safety magic is active. One hit to the barrier means a win. It is just like real combat, but without the bodies. The battle of the elites begins. Leon Hart charges in, swinging his sword with massive earth-shaking force against the second year. The senior blocks everything. He is fast. He parries and launches a brutal counterattack. Leon hits the dirt and fires a kick right at the guy's face. But he's gassed. He realizes he can't match Gray's intensity. His rival is impressed. You are stronger than last year, he says. But then, he decides to crank up the speed. The pressure intensifies. Can you even keep up with me? The second year asks with a smirk. Leon dodges, but it's not enough. His barrier flashes. It is over. Luana takes the win for the second year elites. Now for the main event. The challengers step forward. Leon passes Gray and whispers a quick good luck. You better stay in this academy, he warns. Gray just nods. He has fought literal demons before. This kid is nothing. Debel approaches, dragging his sword across the stone. The sound is chilling. He looks ready to kill. I am sending you to hell, he growls. Just like I did with Bradley. The real fight starts now. Gray charges head on. Steel crashes against steel, sparks flying everywhere until Debel violently throws Gray across the arena floor. Gray's arm is vibrating from the impact. Ariel was right, this guy's strength and reflexes are on a different level. No tricks are going to work here. Gray is starting to realize just how dangerous this stranger really is. He thinks about his secret ability. But Ariel's warning echoes in his head, never use it, no matter what happens. A tournament isn't worth his life. Using that power could literally be the end of him. He knows that. The arena barrier would probably shatter too. But then Devil charges again with zero mercy. He is coming for blood. Gray is ready to risk it all to save the program, but he doesn't want to kill the guy. Suddenly Devil drops low. Heavy strike. Gray blocks and swings back, but the gap is clear. Devil's physical stats are just too high to overcome. Wait, Devil isn't just fast, he is holding back. Trust me, the real nightmare is just beginning. Gray stares into the enemy's twisted face, met only by a chilling, malicious smile. Before he can react, Devil lunges with a lethal strike that feels impossible to dodge. As Gray raises his blade, he realizes he is too slow. But then it hits him. His enemy weakened the attack on purpose just to bait his defense. High in the stands, Professor Ariel watches in horror as a corrupt purple power begins pulsating deep within Debley's heart. This energy is pure chaos, concentrating entirely on his left side. It is clear these second-year students are unhinged and ready to cause a bloodbath. Our Divine Eye student is struggling hard just to stay alive under this relentless pressure from the upperclassmen. The crowd is already whispering that the Divine Eye position should be abolished. Budra even claims the Academy's special rankings will fall into total ruin. Everyone seems to agree with Budra, praising him as the only thoughtful student who actually cares about the Academy's future. Sensing a disaster, Ariel orders the fight to stop, but Budra just mocks her. He claims a simple simulation could never be truly dangerous. Another teacher insists the arena's protection spell will block any fatal blows. He tells Ariel to let them fight seriously unless she has a secret agenda. But Ariel knows the truth. Even with the protection spell active, Gray is in grave danger of being slaughtered right now. Suddenly, an explosion of malevolent purple mana erupts from the second-year student. Darkness wraps around his arm and blade as he charges a massive strike. When he lets it loose, the resulting mana explosion literally splits the arena in two. What they didn't know. The protective barrier was instantly shattered. The blast nearly takes out Budra, proving Ariel's warnings were right. She is furious that Bradley would teach his students such forbidden magic. The spectator's barrier is holding too strong, blocking her from using her prison magic. Ariel screams to cancel the tournament and drop the shields immediately. She yells for Gray to run for his life. Stopping this fight from the outside is going to take way too much time. Gray knows fleeing is useless. Turning his back now means certain death. The students scream in terror as the entire arena begins to tremble. The teacher warns that help is 30 seconds away. It is a gamble, but Ariel decides to put all her trust in Gray's hidden potential. She screams for Gray to treat his sword as part of his own body. She needs him to move as one with his power, and Gray starts to focus. Gray narrowly dodges a blow that should have killed him. He is not backing down. His teacher's belief is the only fuel he needs. He has one choice: become the blade itself. A massive dark strike rushes toward him, but Gray stands perfectly still, waiting for the right moment. The blow connects, triggering a massive mana explosion. But then, a brilliant red aura erupts, and Gray suddenly appears right behind his opponent. The enemy is stunned. In Gray's eyes, everything has slowed down to a crawl. This is the power he was looking for. Gray has reached godlike speed. He swings with everything he has, delivering a brutal, crushing blow straight to his enemy's face. The opponent's barrier kicks in, but it is not enough. The shield begins to shatter into pieces as the raw impact slams into him. Devil Rortle is sent flying like a rag doll, smashing through the arena walls. That is the insane power of Gray's counterattack. Gray successfully crushed the defense and dealt a massive injury. Professor Heat rushes over, shouting to see if the second year is still alive. Medics are called, but Devil Rortle slowly stands back up. He is dripping with dark magic and looks completely unharmed. This changed everything. Ariel warns Gray to keep his guard up because this nightmare isn't over. Devil lunges again, unleashing a wave of pure dark mana. Black tentacles tear through the arena floor, hunting Gray down. Ariel demands the barrier be dropped, but Professor Heat is still struggling to deactivate it. Gray is forced to move, pulling off high-speed jumps to avoid the shadows. Devil closes the distance in a flash, charging straight at him. Their swords clash in a storm of sparks. Gray realizes he isn't fighting a human anymore, not with this kind of monstrous strength. But then again, Gray himself is far from a normal student, manifesting a level of power that defies all logic. Gray breaks the clash and slips behind his foe. He can't believe his strongest attack didn't leave a single scratch on Devil. Gray goes for another strike, but he underestimates the enemy's speed. He takes a direct hit and coughs up a massive amount of blood. Ariel screams in absolute shock. She can only watch as her favorite student's life hangs by a single thread. The pain is blinding, but Gray knows he has to react now or die. Driven by pure obsession, his aura shifts into something terrifying. In one clean motion, Gray delivers a cut that severs both of his opponent's arms. A mysterious fatal power surges through him to end it. Pure darkness begins pouring out of the enemy's severed limbs. It's a gruesome sight that leaves the entire stadium in silence. The teachers are frozen in shock until the barrier finally drops. They rush in immediately, pinning Devil Rortle to the ground and ending the fight. Gray leans on his sword, completely spent. His heart is racing, and his body is covered in deep, jagged gashes. Blood is gushing everywhere. Ariel immediately casts her highest healing magic, ordering the other teachers to help save Gray's life. Finally, his vitals stabilize. Just a few moments later, Gray actually manages to stand up on his own 2 feet. The teachers can't believe how fast he is recovering. Ariel checks his soul and realizes that despite the chaos, it is still completely intact. She confirms that the danger is over, the healing magic did its job, and Gray is finally out of the woods. The plan worked, but only just. Ariel is furious with Heat, knowing that without her intervention, Gray would be a corpse right now. Heat fired back, claiming they managed to reduce the damage enough for healing magic to actually work. But get this, Heat intended to handle the solo counterattack himself, even if it took some time. Things were spinning out of control fast, but Devil Redardal was already being rushed straight to the infirmary. Amidst the chaos, one huge fact was confirmed. Gray's strike was so powerful it actually forced the second-year representative's ultimate protective barrier to activate. And just like that, the winner of the duel was our first-year underdog, Gray. The crowd went wild. Gray just pulled off a historic upset by crushing a senior. The Divine Eye student finally ended the first year's humiliating 35-game losing streak. Heat declared the old records didn't matter anymore. After this fight, it was crystal clear Ariel's faith in this kid was right on the money. The critics were silenced, and the plan to scrap the Divine Eye class was tossed out. Even the director felt ashamed for almost throwing away such an incredible talent. Ariel gave her deepest thanks to Gray while he nursed his wounds. As for those who wanted the class gone, they have got some serious soul-searching to do. Boudreaux was in a tight spot, but Gray made it even weirder. Feeling awkward, he actually lied and claimed he didn't know he had that power. Ariel saw right through him. She remembered him using that exact move on the Ogre General. Gray could only hope his teacher would play along with the deception. To stop the executives, Gray needed to keep his true strength a secret. Ariel understood, but she also realized Gray did not act like a normal kid living his first life. But seeing how much trust Gray placed in her, Ariel decided to back his play. She told the director that Gray's power defied normal magic analysis, but claimed she could perceive the truth using her own specialized vision. By working with Heatcoat, Ariel managed to help Gray control his wild energy. Now, she was deep into researching how to push that power to the absolute limit. She demanded total control over Gray's development. After seeing that insane fight, Director Alexandro knew he could not say no to her request. The director officially handed it over. The entire Divine Eye Special Group was now Gray's responsibility to lead. He offered the Academy's full support for whatever they needed. They were relieved to save the group, but next, they headed underground to check on the fallen Devil Redardal. The director wanted the Divine Eye team close by, so Ariel went with him to assess the grim situation. The results were terrifying. The energy used on Devil was almost a perfect match for the power used by the enemy executive. It was clear the same research center crystals were back in play. When the director asked about Devil, Ariel delivered the heavy news. He was gone. Ariel explained that Devil lost his soul the moment the power was triggered. He was corrupted from the start, and it was obvious the real target was Gray. This was cold-blooded retaliation for Gray taking out Varian Bradley. Devil was just a puppet manipulated after Varian's death, pointing to a mysterious third faction. Both Ariel and Gray realized a much larger enemy was lurking in the shadows. Ariel knew tracking them down would take time and connections. Her gut told her this conspiracy went deep into the Academy's highest levels. Gray stepped up to help his teacher. He noted that he had finally figured out how to use his power without tearing his own soul apart. But Gray admitted the physical toll was getting worse. Heatcoat suggested it was time to kick their training up to the next dangerous stage. Ariel promised Gray would learn to master this power far beyond his current limits. With that, Gray headed straight back to the training grounds. Heatcoat warned him this new method was brutal and incredibly painful. He offered a safer route, but it would take way longer than Gray had. Gray chose the hard way. As he prepared, he focused everything on becoming one with his blade, trying to recapture that same legendary feeling from before. A crimson aura bled from the blade, wrapping around his body. He lunged forward with a single strike, completely obliterating the heavy armor on the field. He moved like a blur, cutting through targets with terrifying precision. Even the teachers watching from the sidelines could not believe his insane speed. Gray shredded another target, but the rebound hit him hard. His body started to buckle, and he began coughing up blood from the sheer pressure. After one last spinning strike, he collapsed. Gray's strength finally gave out, and he fell into a deep unconscious heap on the ground. The teachers rushed in with recovery magic to patch him up. Within seconds, Gray was back on his feet like nothing happened. Heatcoat noted that Gray was pushing past his old limits, and his body was finally adapting. But Gray didn't even hear him. He was completely lost in the flow. Once he snapped out of it, the pain hit him like a truck. His professor explained that the agony was just proof he was breaking his limits. But even Heatcoat knew this was borderline torture. He left the choice to keep going entirely up to Gray himself. Gray did not hesitate. He wanted more. But just as they started another round, Ariel showed up and shut it down, ordering them to limit this to once a day. Gray tried to argue his soul was fine and his body was already healed. He did not see the big deal. Ariel fired back, magic fixes bones, but not shattered nerves. If he kept this up, his senses would eventually scramble beyond repair. She reminded him that he knew the risks better than anyone. Pushing too far meant losing the use of his hand forever. Heatcoat backed her up, admitting even he was hesitant to do this twice. One of the mages could not help but wonder why was Grey so desperate for power. Ariel took the blame, knowing she was the one who threw Grey into that fight. Now, vengeful enemies were coming for him, and Devil was just the beginning. She revealed that shadow groups and criminals were operating right under the Academy's nose, and they were the ones who helped Bradley in the first place. Even with heavy security, Ariel feared they would not be able to keep Grey safe for long. What comes next? You and I know that strength is survival. Grey chose this path, and there is no looking back. His real goal? The Liquidator. Ariel sees his genius and promises to help him reach his true peak. Heath can tell Ariel is planning something. She asks Grey if he wants the fastest way to power. Heath drops a truth bomb. The quickest way to level up right now is getting a better sword. The Academy's sword was high level, but it just cannot handle the sheer intensity of Grey's growing power. No ordinary blade can withstand him. Seeing his broken weapon, the professor takes him to her secret vault. Heath is stunned. Is she really giving her own legendary weapon to a student? She spins a key, tearing open a portal. She says Grey is worthy, leaving him in total shock. Inside, it is a sea of gold. Endless wealth and powerful artifacts are piled as far as he can see. The vault is massive. After searching, Ariel leads him to the swords and tells him to choose his partner. Every blade looks deadly. Heath knows Grey will never find a better collection of swords in the world. With so many choices, it is hard to decide. Normally, she would have him test every single blade. But because of Grey's power, they only get one shot. They start with the sharpest blade in the room. Grey picks up a massive sword. Ariel promises it cuts with terrifying precision despite its giant size. A totem appears. Grey sets his stance, twists his core, and delivers a strike that could level a building. The totem is obliterated, but the blade is fine. It is powerful, but maybe too heavy for combat. Heath points out the obvious. The sharpest sword is useless if you are too slow to hit anything. Still, it is perfect for heavy tanks. Ariel gives him a magic pouch so the weight is not an issue. Grey asks if he can even borrow this. Ariel just shrugs. Better he uses it than let it rot. She is entrusting this legendary steel into the hands of someone who can actually use it well. And when Grey finally faces Vian, that summoner is going to deeply regret not having this blade. The memory of his defeat motivates him. He thanks the professor for giving him the strength to win. Heath warns him to keep it hidden. On the market, this blade is worth over 10 billion gold coins. Grey is freaking out over the price. He tries to say no, but Ariel insists this is a gift. Grey cannot believe she is entrusting him with such an expensive weapon. Ariel says protecting the divine eye was worth way more than 10 billion. This is his long overdue reward. Then she jokingly threatens him, asking if his life isn't worth the price. Grey immediately bows in gratitude. Our hero promises to cherish the giant blade, but Ariel isn't done. He needs a normal sword too. Grey is blown away by her treasure. Heath knows nobody has an eye for quality like Professor Ariel. With her divine eye, she can make endless wealth. She asks Heatcoat, the instructor, for his best recommendation. Heatcoat points to a golden hilt. Grey picks up the thin blade to test it. He lets out a few swift strikes. It is well made, but something feels off. Heatcoat agrees it is not the fit. He suggests an experimental blade that might handle Grey's unique power. Heatcoat presents a sword covered in glowing blue runes. He tells Grey to give this spatial sword a try. The hilt glows the moment Grey touches it, but he's confused. Why doesn't this blade have a sharp edge? It is a tech experiment, not a real sword. It is made of blunt steel designed to be indestructible. Grey gets the point. With the kind of power he has, he might not even need a sharp edge. Heatcoat warns that normal swords will only hold him back. He needs something that can actually survive his growth. He should prepare for a future where he won't rely on an edge but on his own strength. This tech sword is perfect. It deforms everything it hits. Ariel still wants him to have a normal blade too. She asks if he wants to try an axe. Grey looks at the other weapons, but his heart is set. He wants to test every sword here. He finds a red blade that feels incredibly strong. Then, a long sword with a strange energy catches his eye. Ariel says this sword was left by a student who graduated. It isn't famous, but as he grips the hilt, everything clicks. You and I are about to see him become unstoppable. This sword is gleaming, a masterpiece built for surgical precision. It feels so right, like he was born to wield it since birth. Grey's stunned because he's never held a blade this effortless. Ariel's curious though, and pushes him to test another one for a better fit. Grey asks if breaking a former student's work is an issue, but Ariel knows the blade would rather shatter in glory than collect dust. When he asks who forged it, Ariel drops a name that stops him cold: Metalum Norm. Grey's eyes go wide in total disbelief. You and I both know Metalum Norm is the legendary magic blacksmith. Using a blade like this, Grey can't even wrap his head around it. Now it's time for a real test, so they head straight for the training arena. Ariel wants to push this thing to its breaking point to see what it's made of, but first, she hands him a blade forged with experimental tech. They start with the weirdest sword first to see how it reacts to Gray's mana. He closes his eyes, trying to become one with the steel. He loses the connection and tries again, flooding the blade with his magic. He's looking for that perfect soul-to-soul bond with the weapon. But nothing happens. His power just won't kick in, and Gray realizes he feels exactly like his normal unpowered physical condition. Something's wrong with the sword. It's clearly not built to handle Gray's unique brand of magic, so they decide to toss it aside. They pivot to a more standard blade this time. Ariel pulls a sword from a magical vault and tells him to give it another shot. He focuses his mind, preparing for the strike. This time, the spark ignites and a massive blinding aura explodes from his body. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes in his mind. There's no more time. It warns him that something massive is about to happen. Heathcote watches from the side, confident that releasing the power shouldn't be an issue with this other sword. Voices still ringing in his ears, Gray lunges forward, tearing through the targets. The power of the blows is the same, but the swing, it's smoother than ever. One vertical slash and the training armor is history. His body feels light as air as he dances through the arena with effortless strikes. He's shattering everything in sight. The watching mages can see it. Gray is on a completely different level than his last training session. He's a blur of motion, wiping out every target in the area. With this kind of speed, it feels like he's literally flying through the arena. He lands the final blow, but then he notices blood dripping from his mouth. He realized he just cleared every single target in one go. Last time, he could barely hit half. Now, they've all fallen, plus he's still on his feet instead of passing out like before. But what they didn't know was the cost. Blood is soaking his chest from a massive wound. Ariel screams for him to drop the sword immediately. Gray drops the blade and collapses to his knees. The professors rush in, frantically casting healing spells to keep him from fading away. He's fading fast. One of the professors begs him to stop exerting himself before he does permanent damage to his body. Ariel warns that this massive blood loss is draining his life force. He broke his limits, and she thinks it's practically a divine sign. If he keeps moving like this without knowing his own condition, he's dead. In real combat without a healer, he won't get a second chance. Gray looks at the blade and his jaw drops. Not a single scratch. It took everything he had and didn't even flinch. Through his divine eye, the sword is glowing with pure power. But then, Ariel looks at the sky and her face goes pale. Boom! A pink magical explosion rips through the academy. The ground shakes as the entire building starts to crumble and fall apart. Students are running for their lives as debris rains down. The instructors jump into action, throwing up magical barriers to save everyone. Heathcote realizes the attack hit the high-security vault. This wasn't an accident. Someone came here specifically to steal something dangerous. Immediately after the blast, someone teleported away in a fraction of a second. That should be impossible since the vault has anti-teleportation magic and massive blast-resistant walls. Executioner magic was mixed in with the thick smoke. They must have used secret crystals from the underground lab to breach the walls. Gray knows exactly who's behind this. Varian Bradley's allies. They finally made their move against the Academy headquarters. And just like they planned, several items were stolen from the vault. The Academy is keeping the details quiet, but an outsider shouldn't have been able to trigger an explosion like that. They blew the teleportation inhibitor and vanished. This suggests it was an inside job, meaning the Academy is no longer a trustworthy organization. Ariel honestly wonders if they ever truly were. Gray realizes that if the enemy controls the Academy, they have the influence to take whatever they want from the shadows. The only reason they blow the vault is because they couldn't get the item legally. Ariel's certain about one thing: the culprits are blood drinkers. They've infiltrated the Academy already. Gray remembers how they took out Bella's father and now they're here. With Varian gone, Gray is now the top target on their hit list. The professor warns him never let your guard down, especially outside these walls. Gray heads back to class, but the atmosphere is heavy. The students are shaking in their boots, completely overcome with despair. It's not just the explosion. A notification for an outdoor exercise just went out, and that's what really has everyone terrified. Gray tells Leon he read the letter and feels no fear. It is a 16-hour march through monster-infested territory for a full week, and the training is brutal. Leon can't believe how calm Gray is. 16 hours of marching with no sleep and monsters everywhere? Stick around, because things are about to get wild. Did you know that more than half of the students quit every single year just because of this one task? Gray drops some cold truth in a real march for battle. You never know when the enemy will strike. Back in his old squad, there were no time limits. They were just tossed into the mountains and forced to march through monster-infested forests for a solid week. Warriors actually died back then. Now, the professors are at least watching, so we know that kind of tragedy won't happen here. Leon realized right then that even these hellish exercises don't intimidate a boy who's already at such an advanced level. While everyone else is shaking, Gray feels something lurking outside. Then, the professor announces the start of the annual freshman outdoor exercise. Fail this challenge, and you probably won't see your second year. The professor demands perseverance, and the mission officially begins. Our protagonist reaches the edge of the Wintley continent. Gray remembers this region is totally uninhabited and starts to wonder why. They plunge into the forest following the professors. A student complains it's the wrong path, but training is supposed to follow the hardest route. Then they follow the professor up a steep, brutal trail. Exhaustion is already starting to set in for the entire class. But then the professor reveals the truth: only 8 hours have passed, and they're barely halfway through the march. The students are absolutely drained, they've still got half the journey left, and it's only the very first day. The professor claims they'll get used to it, but Leon knows he's lying. The difficulty and fatigue are only going to get worse. Ignoring those lies, everyone notices something strange. Leon shows zero signs of fatigue as they keep moving. Leon knows this is the Swordsman course peak. He's pushing his limits, but he notices Gray hasn't even lost his breath once. Suddenly, a massive spider lunges at a terrified girl. It almost takes her face off, but Gray saves her with a lightning-fast dagger throw. Our black swordsman eliminates the creature, warning everyone that many of the spiders in this region are actually venomous. Leon notices Gray isn't just walking, he's assessing the environment for surprise attacks. To maintain this readiness after 8 hours is insane. See, Gray has incredible stamina because the hellish training he underwent before returning in time helped him out immensely. For Gray, just getting a good night's sleep is already a massive improvement compared to the nightmare of his past life. What truly worries him is Ariel's comment about keeping guard outside. These exercises take them to open areas with almost no security. The academy knows our exact location, but who else does? Our hero just prays that nothing goes wrong during this outdoor training. Suddenly, the professor calls a halt. Everyone is exhausted, but then he announces that it's time for a meal training exercise. The students light up. They're already imagining a massive feast. They're so thankful for the break and the mountain of food they expect. Gray, however, has a really bad feeling about this, especially because the exercise specifically mentions the word meal. The professor kills the mood. This isn't a break, it's a survival lesson. He divides them into squads to keep the strength balanced. The professor informs each squad they'll have a designated space with basic utensils. If they want a meal, they have to prepare it. Leon's in Squad C, while Gray Lee is named the official leader of Squad D along with Bask, Rumia, and Boss. Gray wonders if he'll be a good leader. He's worried no one will want to listen to the special student of the Divine Eye. To his surprise, Squad D is actually friendly. They're way calmer than he expected, and they don't mind taking orders from him at all. He asks if they're okay with him leading. They just don't get the doubt after his victory. He's the most suitable choice. Considering him the most trustworthy, they quickly grab the equipment and ask Gray what their next set of instructions are. Gray sees the change in attitude. His previous match left a massive impression. At this academy, everything really does come down to merit. But then a student realizes a major problem: the supplies provided are totally empty. All he has is a pot and a fire starter and absolutely nothing else. Professor Heed explains the cold reality on a real march: no one is going to provide you with food or gear. One student argues that modern magic should handle logistics, but the professor shuts him down. This only works for planned marches. He confronts them with the truth: in emergency situations, like a battle or if your supply officer dies, you're on your own. You'll need to march for days with zero preparation. And those magic storage bags? Way too rare for anyone but large-scale units. Each person carries their own weight or they quit. Many of you won't even be able to do a single thing. Silence falls. Leon Hart actually apologizes. Meanwhile, Gray had no idea that those storage bags were actually so rare. He'd been treating his like a simple sword bag, but now he knows it's a treasure. But wait, the professor has good news. The professor mentions the forest is full of monsters, but they've been using magical repellent along the entire path. But now they're turning it off. Without the repellent, the monsters are going to start lurking. That's your dinner, class. In Squad D, the members turn to their leader. Gray, what are we supposed to do now? Gray's answer is simple: we hunt the monsters and eat them because it's our only option. He's already spotted footprints nearby. This changed everything. Gray believes a single blade is all they need to handle the coming threat. But the squad is terrified. Real combat in this massive forest? That feels way too daunting. Gray explains that meat eaters will come to them, but sitting still means losing their prey. If they are too scared to fight, he suggests eating bugs and snakes instead. Talk about survival. However, one girl is not backing down. She actually wants to hunt the monsters nearby. They agree Gray is the boss and head in. Time to start tracking those monster footprints. Gray catches a strange scent and warns the group. Suddenly, boom, a massive bear lunges from the bushes. One student is totally frozen by the beast's speed. He barely manages to dive out of the way. But his training kicks in. His body moves on instinct before his brain can even react. He slips behind the beast and strikes. The monster blood sprays everywhere as he warns it not to underestimate him. The bear swipes back, nearly killing him, but then Gray jumps in to save the day. With one perfect strike, Gray severs the bear's hand, saving his friend from a fatal blow. The beast tries again with its left arm, but Gray just slices that one off too. Gray finishes the job and sheaths his sword, casually mentioning that the monster's bones were tough. He gives a pro tip: monsters don't just stop after being hit. Priority 1 is always stay safe. Real combat is nothing like training. Soon, they have the bear meat roasting over a warm campfire. It actually tastes great. Gray mentions that every monster species has its own unique flavor. He adds that when you are on an expedition, knowing your local monsters is absolutely critical. Gray recommends hunting wild boars for food since they don't eat poison and they taste decent. His friends are impressed with his survival knowledge, but Gray just plays it cool and stays modest. Suddenly, another squad appears. They are starving after failing to catch anything but a few frogs. Gray realizes they have enough meat for everyone and decides to be the nice guy. But just as they are about to eat, the professor stops them. No sharing allowed in this test. The other squad is sent away, heading back into the woods hungry and completely miserable. They march further until the professor calls it. They are setting up camp right here and now. The exhausted students get their gear. The professor hands out canned food and tents for the night. Now the real work starts. They have to gather wood and pitch tents in specific spots. The professor warns them to stay alert. Expect surprise attacks during the night watch. Students start whispering about some shady strategies, but the professor is listening to everything. He tells them straight they are spread out so nobody can relax. The training starts immediately. The faster they set up, the more sleep they get. Gray starts organizing the night watch. The group suggests pairs, but Gray decides one person per shift is enough for their team. Everyone knows the middle shifts are the worst. The first and last are always much calmer. Gray takes the hit and volunteers for the second shift, asking who wants the third. The boy Gray saves steps up for the third, while the rest of the team covers the first. The rule is simple. Wake the next person on the list before you go to sleep. While Gray sleeps, Rumia is on duty. But in the shadows, an assassin is creeping up. Rumia is nodding off, but Gray is wide awake. He heard something and grabs his blade. If it were a monster, it would be loud. This sound was way too quiet and deliberate. It is definitely a human. Gray peeks out and sees Rumia half asleep. She has completely missed the danger. Is it just an illusion? No. Gray trusts his gut. He stands up to investigate the area. Maybe it is the professor testing them. Gray does not care. He is not letting his guard down tonight. He remembers the warning from Ariel. After his last victory, he is a target for bloodsuckers. Could it be an assassin? Gray decides to act like it is and takes every precaution. Standing still is a death sentence against range. He has to move, and he has to move fast. Gray slips out of the tent, leaving Rumia behind to stalk through the dark woods. The full moon is blindingly bright, making this stealth mission feel like it is happening in broad daylight. Detecting enemies is easy now, but hiding? That is nearly impossible. Gray stays low and moves with caution, pulling from his specialized divine bow training. In his previous life, his mentor Ariel taught him the secret. True silence starts from the back of the feet, moving only on the tips of your toes. By letting the heel touch the ground last, you kill the noise. Even if you snap a twig, it won't sound like a heavy human footstep to a trained ear. Instead, it blends in with the wind or passing animals, keeping him completely off the radar of unwanted attention. This was the way of the divine bow, walking barefoot through the mountains to become one with nature. Gray executes every movement perfectly. Suddenly, he spots a figure holding a dagger. Gray tosses a stone as a distraction, and the intruder walks right into his trap. Gray instantly pins his sword against the man's throat, demanding he freeze. He threatens to end him right there if he doesn't talk. Who sent him? What is his name? But then, Gray realizes it is just the old professor. He asks if this is some kind of surprise academy drill for grades. The professor explains he was just testing the perimeter watch. He definitely didn't expect a student to vanish and then reappear with a blade at his own neck. Honestly, at this point, it is hard to tell who is actually supposed to be the teacher here. Gray wonders if this is all an act and keeps his guard up. If the professor really meant business, he would be carrying something much more lethal. Deciding the professor is safe, Gray finally lowers his steel. Just then, Rumia rushes out with her sword drawn, alerted by the suspicious noise. She demands to know what's going on. The professor admits he was checking their defenses, but Gray had already neutralized him before he could even get close. He is blown away, claiming their vigilance is flawless. He has never seen a group of freshmen run such a tight camp. Rumia is annoyed, telling Gray he should have been sleeping while she handled the watch duty. The professor is confused why Gray wasn't officially on duty. Gray just asks if he stepped on a branch. When the professor says yes, Gray explains he knew immediately it was a human sound. The professor is stunned. Gray detected an imminent attack from the sound of a single twig while he was supposedly fast asleep. Gray just brushes it off, saying he wasn't fully asleep yet and that it was probably just a coincidence. The professor just laughs. Between the duel yesterday and this, Gray keeps defying logic. He starts to wonder if there is anything left for the academy to even teach him. Right then and there, he officially bans Gray from all future night watch training exercises. If Gray handles everything alone, the other students will never learn. Gray asks if one missing person will really mess up the whole squad's performance. The professor promises that Gray's group won't face any more surprise attacks tonight. In fact, they are getting a perfect score for vigilance with 0 extra effort required. The professor logs the grade and orders the rest of the group to continue the training without their ace. Internally, the professor is still shaken. Graylee approached him from behind and he didn't feel a thing until it was too late. He wonders if the kid belongs to an elite Black Ops unit. It seems impossible for his age, but his stealth skills are on a completely different level. He can't help but question who Graylee really is. When dawn finally breaks, he signals the group to get back on the move. The other students are walking zombies. They barely slept a wink because of the constant alerts throughout the night. But our main character, Graylee, leads Squad D without showing a single hint of exhaustion. Another long day of marching passes, and they set up camp once again. The professor announces that the day's training is officially over. No more grueling or strenuous drills for the night. Tents are up, and the students collapse into their beds while the food cooks. Everyone is relieved, but Gray finds this sudden permission to rest very suspicious. He is certain that tomorrow is going to be absolute hell, likely even worse than anything they have seen. Leon cheers Gray on, confident he'll crush whatever comes next. Meanwhile, Professor Heathcote is busy preparing a massive feast for the tired students. The staff brings out buckets of food, telling everyone to eat their fill. After 2 days of brutal survival training, they've finally earned a night to recover their strength. But then, the professor flashes a wicked smile. He knows exactly how much harder things are about to get. The next morning, the march leads them to a massive, intimidating peak. The real trial at Mount Gastia is about to begin. The groups follow the professor up the mountain path. Seeing the peak was terrifying at first, but their steady pace has started to give the students some real confidence. So far, the whole class is holding steady. It makes sense, considering these kids all passed the academy's insane entrance exams. However, the professor warns that the games are over. In 2 kilometers, they are entering a whole new level of danger. They are heading straight into the territory of the water lizards. These beasts are far more dangerous than anything they encountered earlier. One mistake here means death or instant elimination. Panic starts to ripple through the group at the thought of these lethal monsters. The professor orders them to stay silent. These lizards hibernate during the dry season to save energy, so if they're quiet, they might survive the next 2 weeks. If they avoid making noise, they might slip past. But there is a catch because it's the dry season. These monsters are desperate for any liquid. And their favorite drink? Human blood. If the water lizards catch their scent, it is game over in an instant. Gray isn't worried. This is just like his old hunting days. But his team? They are definitely not ready. You and I are about to see if these rookies can handle monster hunting like the veteran Graylee, but the professor has some serious doubts. Watching from the sidelines, the professor saw the rookies clanking around like scrap metal. Rent snapped, demanding they slow down before they get everyone killed. Silence is their only shield. As long as they don't make a sound, they might just stay safe. Rent made it clear, no camping in water lizard territory. While the students were collapsing from exhaustion, Graylee realized something was off. Had the academy actually taught them how to find a safe spot? The noise was still too loud. The professor barked another warning. One heavy footstep could bring the whole swarm down on them. As they pushed forward, the professor dropped a bombshell. From here on out, absolute silence. Not even a single whisper was allowed. Speak and you fail. It was that simple. The class moved like ghosts, using only hand signals to communicate in the oppressive silence. Despite the rules, the students started relaxing. To them, this just felt like a boring mountain hike. They thought if they kept this slow pace, the whole thing would be a breeze. They convinced themselves that the monsters weren't even real. After all, why would the academy put kids in a situation where they could actually get wiped out by real beasts? It was all just a hoax in their minds. A fake threat designed to make them practice marching slowly. Then, disaster struck. One student slipped on a loose rock, crashing down with a loud thud. He wasn't worried about monsters, he was just terrified of losing points on his grade. But then, the shadows moved. Water lizards were everywhere. In a heartbeat, every sword was out as the cold reality of the hunt set in. The boy on the ground froze. He watched in pure horror as a lizard lunged straight for him. Suddenly, the entire group was under siege. Professor Heathcote moved like a blur. He buried his blade deep into a lizard's skull, ending it instantly. Now, that is how a pro handles business. But the nightmare wasn't over. Another beast charged the students. Leon swung with everything he had, but his sword just bounced off. He didn't even leave a scratch on its hide. Big mistake. The creature turned its hungry eyes on Leon and charged with terrifying speed. Just as the beast was about to strike, Professor Heathcote intercepted it with a massive punch. He realized the students were completely out of their league and ordered a full retreat right now. The professors formed a defensive circle, keeping the lizards at bay while shouting for the students to get back. But you and I can see the problem. Even the masters were only dealing tiny, surface-level cuts on these monsters. The professors knew they couldn't win a straight fight. They had to play smart. Since it was the dry season, just making the lizards bleed a little would eventually dehydrate and kill them. Leon asked the terrifying question, what happens in the rainy season? The professor's answer was chilling. In the rain, the students wouldn't be hunters. They would just be easy snacks. That is exactly why they only hold this training when there is zero chance of rain. With the immediate threat finally dead, the professor told them they could speak again. The nightmare was over. One word at the wrong time would have meant certain death. With that lesson learned, they began the grueling climb up the mountain. They eventually pushed to the summit, taking down a few more stragglers along the way. The moment Heathcote announced the end of the march, everyone just collapsed. Leon's body was fine, but his mind was totally exhausted. Having to stay perfectly silent while hiking is a mental torture no one expected. The training was brutal for everyone, but Leon? He didn't show any reaction at all. Heathcote noted that the lizard attacks had been getting nastier lately. He warned that they were about to enter another silent zone and asked if anyone had questions before they vanished into the quiet again. Gray Lee spoke up. Something was wrong. He pointed to a single cloud in the sky that was growing bigger and coming right for them. Heathcote consulted Professor Wormel about the strange weather. Wormel was baffled. A cloud like that shouldn't even be possible during this time of year. Something was definitely off. The cloud was massive now. Fearing the worst, they decided to call it quits and head back immediately. But Professor Wormel wasn't having it. He argued that a little rain was no reason to stop the training. Heathcote fired back. This weather was abnormal and dangerous. The lives of the students mattered way more than some training exercise. They needed to move, fast. Professor Wormel, the man with the mustache, insisted they trust his years of experience. Instead of retreating, he decided to double the pace. They were going to outrun the rain. To him, this was the ultimate test. He told the students to follow him like their lives depended on it. Because they did. He believed they were ready for the rain. His orders were simple: don't fall behind, and whatever you do, don't stop to fight the lizards. Just keep moving no matter what. His final order? Total silence. But then, just as Gray predicted, the sky opened up and a torrential downpour slammed into the group. Heathcote didn't trust this rain. The air felt too heavy, too humid. He started to suspect this wasn't natural weather. This felt like high-level magic at work. Even Wormel was starting to get worried. This rain shouldn't exist. Leon leaned in and asked the professor if it was really safe to be talking this loudly out here. Right then, a monster appeared from nowhere. A massive water lizard lunged from the shadows, striking Professor Wormel with everything it had. The beast's attack was heavy, but Wormel dodged by a hair. He countered instantly, burying his sword deep into the creature's arm. But it wasn't over yet. The lizard let out a deafening shriek and whipped its tail around. Wormel barely managed to get his sword up in time to block the blow. He drew blood, but the impact sent him flying backward. The students panicked, but the stubborn professor scrambled back to his feet, ready for round 2. Leon couldn't believe it. A professor should be way faster than that. Seeing someone that strong get hurt so easily, this changed everything about how dangerous these things really are. The speed was insane. Everyone knew the lizards were fast, but in the rain, they were moving like lightning. Faster than anyone had ever seen in the dry season. Heathcote screamed for everyone to stay sharp. This was no longer a test. He and the other professors charged forward, weapons ready to face the slaughter. Stick with me. Heathcote lands a heavy blow, but the monster isn't finished. A sudden tail whip catches him off guard, sending the professor flying. The lizard lunges for the kill, but Heathcote springs back up and puts the beast down for good. The professors finally take down the monsters, but the cost is high. Everyone is injured and bleeding. There's no way they can continue training like this. Wormel calls it, no more games. Everyone needs to use the emergency teleportation spell right now. But then, the realization hits the spell isn't working at all. They're trapped. Is anyone else present even capable of casting an emergency teleport? Another professor explains the grim reality. The space is jammed. Something is blocking the teleportation, keeping them stuck in the danger zone. Between the rain and the blocked teleport, it's clear someone is targeting them. Wormel is in pure shock. How are they ever going to escape this place? With no way out, the only option left is to stay put and pray for the rain to cease. Heathcote suspects this rain is actually artificial, a trap designed to keep them pinned down. They decide that staying still is their best shot at survival compared to fighting with the little strength they have left. Luckily, they managed to survive that previous life and death battle without losing a single soul. They rush to heal Wormel, but time is running out. You see, these water lizards get much more aggressive and dangerous during the rain. Heathcote knows staying put is a death sentence. That's when Gray speaks up, his voice cutting through the panic to address the professor. He makes a bold claim: as long as his recovery magic holds, he can fight right alongside them. Heathcote sees the path. With Gray's power, they might actually survive this territory. But can the boy's body really handle a fight this intense? Help isn't coming, and they both know it. But Heathcote gives a grim warning: even with recovery magic, using that mode twice in one day is a massive risk. Ariel's orders were clear: Gray is forbidden from going this far. But for Gray, this is the perfect moment to push his training to the limit. He's willing to risk everything for the academy. Heathcote argues that Ariel would have stopped him if this was something that could be easily healed later. Gray snaps back: there is simply no other way to get these students back to safety. He questions if the professor would really let everyone die just to keep him safe. Ariel knew Gray would try to sacrifice himself like this. She begged the professor, please, do not let him do anything he can't take back. Heathcote makes a dangerous call. He ignores Ariel's orders and asks Grey to join the fight, but Wormel steps in to stop them. Grey might be a champion, but Wormel warns that they can't just gamble everyone's lives on the shoulders of a single student. Heathcote doesn't blink. He knows that with Grey's true power, the boy can solo a water lizard by himself. It's time to bet everything on the boy's mysterious power. But Professor Morgan isn't willing to take that kind of gamble. He wants to wait for headquarters. Little does he know, Galac's signal is already being blocked by something in this area. Galac is proactive as always, but now they're stuck waiting for a response that might never actually arrive. The mustache professor is terrified. He thinks moving is suicide. Does Heathcote really want to put all these students in the line of fire? Waiting for reinforcements is the only safe bet. Wandering outside the safe zone now would be a death sentence against those wild, bloodthirsty creatures. Quiet. He warns the students to stay silent before other creatures smell their voices and find them. Huddled under the trees, they wait. But then, more lizards emerge from the shadows. Pure shock hits the group as they're surrounded. Heathcote draws his steel, preparing for the worst. Next to him, Grey grips his sword, ready to join the fray. The beast leaps. In an instant, everyone unleashes their full power at once to meet the attack. Steel flashes at high speed. A lizard's tail slams a professor into the ground, causing heavy damage. But Heathcote counters with blinding speed, shredding the monster with a flurry of absurdly fast attacks. Together, they finally bring the first water lizard crashing down to the dirt. Healers rush to the fallen professor while two more lizards, drawn by the sounds of battle, begin to advance on their position. Our hero reaches for his blade. Heathcote roars they are World Union professors. Protecting students is what they were born to do. With a heroic surge they charge the beasts. The students watch, eyes wide, as the real battle for survival begins. This is the true power of the Union. Even outnumbered, the professors move like a single deadly machine against the two enemies. Heathcote barks the order: focus all fire on one target first. We have to thin the number of adversaries now. They dance around the attacks, eyes locked on one lizard until a sword finally pierces deep into the creature's chest. The students cheer as another monster falls. There is only one of those beasts left to go. The healer keeps the team standing. It's almost over. It looks like the Union professors are actually going to win this fight. They move in for the final kill. But then you and I see two mysterious swordsmen appear out of nowhere, right behind them. Blood sprays as two professors lose their arms in a flash. Grey did it. He took them both down in one savage, decisive strike while the students watch in shock. Heathcote nods his thanks. Now, they have to keep the rest of these lizards busy. But the real nightmare is just beginning. After the last lizard drops, the real battle begins. The professor corners the two traitors, demanding to know why they tried to stab Heathcote in the back. He demands the truth, but Wormel just lies through his teeth, claiming a lizard tore his arm off during the chaos. His partner, a massive guy, backs up the lie and actually has the nerve to demand they arrest our hero, Grey Lee. But the other professor isn't buying it. He tells them everyone saw the betrayal. The fencing students are not so blind as to let this pass. Heathcote knows the deal. Kidnappings and hits on academy staff, they happen more often than you would think. With enemies everywhere, this whole monster fight was just a setup. They used the lizards as cover to eliminate a professor while everyone was distracted. With the guards gone, they were going to slaughter the students or kidnap them for some seriously dark, illegal work. The fencing students are absolutely floored by the cruelty. Heathcote makes it clear they are only breathing because of Grey Lee's insane reflexes. Our protagonist realizes Heathcote was ahead of the game. The man had seen through those two traitors before the first lizard even attacked. Ormo asks if they slipped up. But for Grey Lee, it is easy. He reads intentions just by watching how someone moves their eyes. The mustache guy's stance gave him away. He was not positioned to defend anyone. He was ready to kill every single one of them. Grey Lee thought he was just a clumsy fool at first. But once the rain started falling, his weird behavior finally clicked. He was failing to dodge attacks that were basically in slow motion. Suspicious, right? Grey used his power, and the injury was not even that serious. Just a nasty bruise, nothing serious. At that moment, the professor seems to have finally gone mad, laughing like a total maniac. The villain mask is off. He sneers that Grey and Reed are way too late. They missed the real trap. Now they are stuck in a lizard-infested hellscape under the freezing rain. Plus, a massive teleportation seal is active. Nobody gets out, and no help is coming. They are completely on their own. He is convinced they are already dead. Even if they know the plan, he laughs that every student here is about to be wiped out. But get this, the goal wasn't just murder. They wanted the group to witness the plan before they were taken. Heathcote demands to hear the escape plan. But according to the mustache man, Wormel's condition is for Rent, Heathcote, and Grey Lee to end their own lives. They can't leave any loose ends behind. If the powerful ones die, the rest might actually get to live. Wormel tries to manipulate them, asking if they will really hesitate with so many lives at stake. But then, a shadow moves. Our hero is already behind him. Sword at the throat, just like that. A hostage. But Wormel doesn't care. He claims this doesn't change a single thing. Grey pressures the guy. He knows this man is the one actually powering the teleportation magic. Blocking academy comms is nearly impossible normally, but with a magic professor helping from the inside, it is a total piece of cake to jam everything. Heathcote is impressed Gray is way too sharp for a student. Gray doesn't blink, keeping his blade on the teleportation expert. The order is simple: fire up that teleportation magic right now and send everyone back to the base of the mountain. If he says no, he loses an eye. If he still refuses, he loses the other one too. No mercy. Next, the fingers. Gray threatens him if he sends a student to the wrong spot or leaves even one person behind, he will regret ever being born. Wormel screams at Professor Gaiac to hold the line and not dare cast that magic. The professor is shaking, stuck between two blades. Heathcote sees the opening and lunges forward with everything he has got to end this now. But Professor Rant hits the dirt, sobbing as he dodges the strike. He slams his hands down, activating the teleportation circle for every student there. The light flashes. Just like that, the entire group is warped back to the bottom of the mountain. They appear right at the academy gates. Rich immediately starts explaining the disaster and why they had to evacuate the lizard zone. The real emergency? A cold-blooded assassination attempt planned by their own teachers. He calls out the magic professors working with Wormel. The students back him up. The whole squad witnessed the betrayal. They were almost killed. Leon steps up, crediting Gray Lee and Heathcote for saving every single one of them. An elder asks about injuries, but the healer sees something strange. Both traitor professors are actually missing their right hands entirely in the aftermath. To keep the truth from leaking, she locks everyone down in handcuffs. Nobody leaves until they talk. Interrogation time. Every student and teacher is taken into separate rooms to get the full story. The directors don't play around. After days of questioning, everyone is gathered in the courtroom for the final judgment. Director Alexandro slams the gavel, demanding silence. It is time for the verdict on this insane kidnapping and murder plot. Wormel was the mastermind behind the excursion, with Balin acting as his primary accomplice. They had help from magic professors Gallic and Rant, who worked within the enclosed environment they created specifically to try and kidnap the students. These three were caught red-handed executing a criminal plan. The academy laws are clear, there is no room for debate. The traitors are sentenced to death, but first, they will be interrogated and tortured to find out who else was in on it. The verdict was in, and trust me, heads were about to roll. The director leaned in, cold as ice, telling them a quick death was off the table. Armin tried to say he had spilled everything, but the director gave him a look of pure venom. Dark energy started pouring out of the director, and Armin completely lost it, trying to bolt from the courtroom. But then, a professor slammed him into the floor like a rag doll, leaving Heathcote bleeding. Irritated, the director ordered the main traitors straight to the interrogation rooms. Gaiac was guilty too, but at the last second, he flipped the script and saved the students. That one move saved his neck. He would live to see another day as a prisoner since he helped minimize the carnage. No execution for this guy. But living is not always a gift. For Gaiac, the real nightmare was just beginning. Heathcote realized Gray Lee was being forced to grow up fast. But get this, the kid was actually getting used to this kind of chaos. It was insane. Heathcote never expected a world-class academy to be crawling with criminals disguised as professors. He could not believe this was supposed to be the top school on the planet. To him, it was nothing like the dream he had before entering. Heathcote noted that while some call this a school, it is really just a survival gauntlet. They take elite students and push them until only the monsters are left. Meanwhile, the professors were losing their juice, so Heathcote asked Gray Lee for his take. Turns out, Gray had been thinking the exact same thing lately. One thing was for sure, he had gotten way stronger here. Back in the village, he was nothing compared to the power he felt now. He could not trust the academy as a whole, but he knew he could trust people like Heathcote and Ariel. For Gray, that was plenty. Heathcote could tell the kid was not just being a student, he genuinely cared about them both. But then, the tone shifted. The real training was about to start, and it was going to be brutal. Everything before, just a warm-up. Heathcote promised that from here on out, Gray Lee's power was going to hit a whole new level. That was the dream. Despite the madness, the group was congratulated for the march. Everyone made it through, somehow. With that march finished, their basic training was officially over. Before the next phase, Heathcote decided to show them what a real elite looks like. He unleashed a display of absolute power. A professor pulverized a 145mm steel pillar with one hit. The catch? Do the same with a single cut or you are out. If they could not slice through that metal by the end of the semester, they were getting expelled. Every year, half the class fails this test. The professor made it clear very few actually graduate. Most just give up or get tossed out the door. He explained that where you end up after failing depends on how long you lasted. Fail in year 1, you just head back home to a regular school, way ahead of everyone else there. With that elite training, you would be the top dog in any hometown school. Or, you could just join the Royal Guard as an elite swordsman. Even the academy failures are legends. To the rest of the world, getting into this place means you are not even an ordinary human anymore. Even the dropouts have insane talent. Gray remembered his master saying the gap between this place and the real world was a literal abyss. But the professor told them to stop worrying about being expelled and focus on the pillar. When a student asked if cutting metal was even possible, the professor handed over a sword to let him find out. The kid swung hard, but the sword just went flying from his hands. His wrist was screaming in pain from the vibration. The professor just scoffed. Dropping your blade is the ultimate sin for a swordsman. Graylee wondered if he could use his own sword from Ariel. With that weapon, he knew he would slice right through. No dice. Only standard academy-issued blades were allowed for the test. Gray knew his mysterious power could make the cut right now, but he realized that would not count. To truly promote, he had to master this without relying on his special abilities. He started calculating how to perfectly blend his raw strength with refined technique. He was on the path to becoming a legendary executioner, but his past life reminded him he needed to be way stronger. Seeing their pale faces, the professor asked if they thought this was impossible without some kind of monster strength like Graylee's, or if they needed crazy muscles to pass. But that was not it. The veteran teachers were leagues above Gray. Even without massive muscles, the gap between students and teachers was just absurd. The secret? Infusing life force into the blade. Gray recognized the concept, using life force to compress ether to the absolute limit. What they did not know was the academy had perfected a way to turn this into a sword technique. In this modern era, you do not need a deep understanding of theory to pull it off. He pulled out a demonic sword that forces your energy into the steel. Once you feel it, this changes everything. You and I know there is always that one terrifying weapon nobody wants to touch first. The students froze, waiting for some brave soul to face the life-draining blade. Graylee thought the name was weird, but strength was all that mattered. But just as he stepped up, Leon raised his hand too, refusing to be outdone. Leon was still burning with shame after being useless during the lizard attack. The professor knew Gray could handle it, but he needed a normal student to set the baseline first. So, he called Leon forward to face the terrifying power of the demonic sword. The second he gripped it, his energy began to vanish. The professor's order was simple: strike immediately, then get that blade back in the sheath. Leon unleashed a strike so massive it nearly pulverized the steel pillar. The sheer force was insane, carving right through the center. But then, the backlash hit. He collapsed, his body completely spent. He barely managed to sheath the blade before hitting the dirt, totally drained of strength. Teachers scrambled to his side, but Professor Rent remained calm. He warned them, all this is the price of power, so don't get reckless. The exhaustion was only temporary. Leon had actually performed better than expected, and he just needed some serious rest to get his spirit back. Most importantly, he never let go of the blade. Now, it was finally Graylee's turn to step up. Everyone watched in awe as Gray stepped forward without a single trace of fear. Despite seeing Leon collapse, Gray gripped the hilt and unsheathed the demonic steel. He felt it immediately, his very life force being sucked away. He didn't have much time before he'd hit his limit. Gray lunged forward, delivering a lightning-fast strike that rocked the room. But even with his insane strength, the pillar still stood tall. This wasn't a normal blade. It felt like his blood was turning into solid ice. Yet Gray sheathed the sword with perfect composure, looking completely unfazed. Rent was floored. In all his years, he had never seen a freshman stay standing after using that cursed blade. Maybe it was his brutal training, or maybe his body was just used to being pushed to the brink of death. Either way, his stamina was monstrous. Rent challenged him to do it again. Gray didn't blink, he drew the sword and struck once more. But this time his vision blurred as he collapsed. Even as he lost consciousness, he managed to sheath the blade. Rent admitted he was only joking. He never expected Gray to actually try a second strike. Now he finally understood how this kid had reached such a terrifying level of power so young. While the two recovered, Rent turned to the class. Now, you and I are about to see why this life force technique is so feared and respected. Even a total beginner can pulverize steel with this. But here's the catch: this level of training only exists at the World Union Academy. No one else dares to teach it. When Rent asked why, one student guessed it was because of the high risk of dropping dead mid-swing. But Rent corrected him surprisingly. No student has ever actually died using this demonic blade. See, the sword stops feeding the moment the user faints. Leon chimed in, guessing the secret was actually how rare these weapons are. Wrong again. The academy actually has 30 of them. The real problem? In actual war, these swords left entire armies dead on the ground, leading to a total ban. If you collapse on a battlefield, you are a sitting duck. The enemy won't wait for you to wake up before taking your head. To survive a real fight, you have to stay moving. Gray realized that almost no one in the outside world could actually pull that off. Rent agreed. Striking once is useless if you fall. True mastery only comes when using this insane power finally becomes as natural as breathing. If you can't control it, the sword uses you. That is exactly how so many legendary warriors ended up dead, consumed by their own weapons. The class grew nervous, wondering if they should even be touching something this dangerous. But to make it to the second year, they have to master it. Rent announced that their next session would be full-on training with these demonic blades. Class was dismissed, with one final warning: don't go fainting in the halls and making everyone late for their next lessons. Stick with me, because Gray knew he had to find a way to use this without crashing. Passing out after one swing is useless in a real fight. That secret power drained him every single time. If he didn't fix this soon, he would be relying on healers for the rest of his life. He absolutely needed this power to defeat the Liquidator. Looking around, he knew joining this academy was the single best decision he had ever made. This was the ultimate training ground. Once he combined this blade with his secret technique, he would become an absolute monster. Over at the second training ground, students watched in horror as Gray began systematically dismantling the practice pillars with a flurry of strikes. He took a 3-minute break between every swing, balancing his life force with his mana. He was finally getting the rhythm down. It was slow going, so he switched to a normal sword to keep the momentum. He refused to let the feeling of that power slip away from his muscles. Just as he prepared to strike again, a student interrupted. Apparently, Professor Ariel wanted him to try practicing with the life force sword solo. She wanted to be there to watch him, so the student told Gray to wait while he went to find her. Gray figured she was busy, but the student disagreed. She had likely predicted his rapid progress and cleared her schedule just for this moment. Mastering the blade in just one single day? Even knowing she had the divine eye, the fact that she predicted this caught Gray completely off guard and speechless. Ariel arrived, apologizing for the wait, but Gray's eyes were fixed on the mysterious hooded woman standing right beside her. Who was she? Noticing his fatigue, Ariel reassured him that her team was ready to heal him. But what they didn't know was how far Gray was willing to go. You and I are watching Gray train with the soul-sucking sword to find that feeling. Ariel watches closely. Gray lets his gut lead, swinging that demon blade with precision. He lunges, nearly shattering the pillar. He's desperate to reclaim that lost, powerful sensation. Switching to a normal blade, he focuses. He feels his lifeblood starting to flow. The energy hits the steel, but then something goes horribly, horribly wrong. His arm turns blood red, possessed by the dark energy of the Black Swordsman. His life force is merging with a starving power. It's draining him against his will. He's lost control. Then, out of nowhere, a sword suddenly shears his entire arm off. That arm was a ticking time bomb. Removing it was the only way to survive. Ariel knows these powers are dangerous. Even the Divine Eye wielder struggled with this. The woman who made that brutal call, the legendary healer, Professor Rafa Elixir. Rafa senses the strange power. She stops the bleeding and activates forced regeneration magic. Bones and muscle knit together. Ariel is stunned. This technique is absolutely magnificent. Rafa loves her craft. She thanks Ariel for helping her find this incredible talent. She predicts he'll wake soon. Sure enough, Gray opens his eyes in a strange place he doesn't know. Ariel is right there, asking the big question: how much does he actually remember? He remembers the chaos. His arm went wild, and then it was just gone. What he didn't know was his arm grew back. Ariel just hands him food. Gray asks if she expected this. She admits she's seen this exact nightmare before. Amy White tried the same thing. That's why Ariel had to be there today. Wait, the Sword Saint? Ariel explains that Amy's arm literally exploded from the pressure. Gray is reeling. If she exploded, how is he still standing right now? Amputation wasn't needed for her, but the trauma was deep. She still fears that power. But she did master it eventually, despite all the overwhelming difficulty she faced. You and I have to see this. A magic contract held her power back. They'd slowly loosen the seal during training. Gray had no idea contracts worked like that. This changed everything. Ariel admits that magic won't work on the darkness inside Gray. Amy's seal lasted 3 minutes. Gray's, it would shatter in less than half a second. There's no formula for this. Ariel regrets that Gray is a complete dangerous anomaly. It is possible, but he would need a lifetime of intense training just to control the output. But the power spirals too fast. Practice seems impossible because he'd die every single time. Then, Gray drops a bombshell. Why not just chop his arm off every time? If she provides the healing, he can keep going. Ariel is absolutely speechless. She can find a healer, but is he really ready for this kind of hell? He's already strong enough to pass the exam without using this dangerous life force. But Gray isn't just looking to pass. He wants to be the strongest, period. Ariel expected that answer. Fine. She'll find someone to do the cutting whenever he fails. Gray grabs the sword again. Now he just needs a volunteer for the amputations. The professors tell the observers if it goes south, cut it off immediately. It's pure agony, but he'll survive. Ariel is betting everything on Gray making it through. Gray thanks her. He's willing to pay any price to achieve this legendary strength. Meanwhile, the other students are failing. One strike and they're passing out from the exhaustion. They quit after 30 minutes, completely exhausted by the sword's draining effect. They leave, but there's Gray. 2 swords. He isn't done yet. You and I have seen some high stats, but Gray, his stamina is actually broken. While the other students were out cold, Gray was already back at the training grounds at sunrise, blades in hand. But get this, he had been swinging that life-draining magic sword since the crack of dawn. Everyone knew he was the Academy's star pupil, but this level of grind? They simply couldn't believe it. The others assumed he was taking breaks. 30 minutes with that sword usually leaves you paralyzed. If Gray was actually going non-stop from sunrise to sunset, well, he would be a dead man walking. But then, Gray switches his swords, and collapses, cold on the ground. He thought that by pushing himself to the limit, he would master the blade. But instead, the secrets of this demonic draining sword felt more out of reach than ever. After all, the instructor never taught him this. This was just a raw, self-taught method Gray was desperate enough to try. He wondered if he could extract his life force without using the blade. Thinking of the liquidator, he quickly forced those negative thoughts out of his head. It was time to push to the end. Eyes shut, he focused everything on that ability to absorb life force. Drawing the blade, he unleashed a perfect cut that completely shattered the stone. He wondered if this was his first time severing an entirely new and massive pillar.